Elena Vale fired 3 bullets into the man who once owned her life. But tonight, blood painted the marble floor of a mafia king's bedroom, and the only thing louder than thunder was the sound of her heart refusing to stop. This woman spent 3 years trapped inside a nightmare, dressed as marriage, every bruise hidden beneath perfect smiles, until the night she stumbled onto a midnight train and met Damien Moretti, a man whose darkness promised freedom instead of fear. If you want to discover how a terrified wife became the woman standing over her abuser's body, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Bonsoir. The rain hammered against the train windows like fists demanding entry. Elena Vale pressed herself into the corner seat of the nearly empty carriage, both hands wrapped around the single duffel bag containing everything she still owned. Her wedding ring sat at the bottom of a gas station toilet 3 hours behind her. Good riddance. She couldn't stop shaking. Every screech of metal on track made her flinch. Every shadow passing through the corridor turned her stomach. Grant would find her. He always found her. 3 years of marriage taught her that running only delayed the inevitable beating, never prevented it. The bruises along her ribs throbbed with each breath, fresh ones from 2 nights ago when she'd burned dinner. Older ones layered beneath, a timeline of failures etched into her skin. Detective Grant Holloway, decorated officer, beloved by the community, trusted by everyone who didn't live behind his closed doors. Elena had stopped trying to explain the truth years ago. The train lurched violently around a curve. Her bag tumbled from her lap, spilling clothes across the dirty floor. Panic seized her throat as she dropped to her knees, frantically shoving everything back inside. Stupid. So stupid. She needed to stay invisible, needed to... "Let me help." The voice came from directly behind her. Elena's entire body went rigid. She didn't turn around. Couldn't. Her fingers kept moving mechanically, grabbing shirts, underwear, the paperback novel she'd hidden in the bathroom cabinet for 2 years. A man crouched beside her. His hands moved efficiently, collecting the scattered items without touching her, without crowding her space. When he placed a folded sweater into her bag, Elena finally looked up. Damien Moretti didn't look dangerous at first glance. Expensive suit, perfectly styled dark hair, the kind of face that belonged in corporate boardrooms or luxury hotels. But his eyes carried something else entirely, a stillness that felt more like controlled violence than calm, like standing near a sleeping predator. He noticed the bruise on her wrist immediately. His gaze flicked to it, then away, expression never changing. "Thank you," Elena whispered, zipping the bag with trembling fingers. "You're welcome." He straightened smoothly, offering a hand to help her up. She ignored it. Old habit. Never accept help from men. Never give them reason to think you owe them something. Damien withdrew his hand without offense and returned to his seat across the aisle. Elena sank back into her corner, hugging the bag against her chest like a shield. The storm outside intensified. Lightning split the sky in jagged white tears. Thunder followed seconds later, shaking the carriage. Elena counted the miles in her head. 4 more stops until the city. Then a bus to the shelter. Then what? Grant had connections everywhere. Police databases, traffic cameras. He'd proven that 6 months ago when she'd tried leaving the first time. She'd made it 30 miles before he appeared in the motel parking lot, smiling that terrible smile that promised pain. Her phone buzzed, the burner she'd bought with cash yesterday. One new message. "You think I won't find you?" Elena's vision swam. No, he couldn't have this number. She'd been so careful The phone rang. Her hands wouldn't move. Couldn't. The sound screamed through the silent carriage, impossibly loud. "Answer it!" Damien's voice cut through her paralysis. Not a suggestion. A command that somehow unlocked her frozen muscles. She pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello?" "There's my girl." Grant's voice dripped satisfaction. "Did you really think you could leave me, Elena? After everything I've done for you?" "I don't..." Her voice cracked. "How did you get this number?" "Baby, I'm a detective. Finding you is literally my job." He laughed, the sound sickeningly familiar. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get off at the next stop and wait for me like a good wife, or I'm going to make the next 3 years feel like paradise compared to what's coming." Elena opened her mouth. Nothing came out. "I can see you shaking from here." Grant's tone shifted, softer now, almost gentle. The voice he used right before everything went wrong. Come home. I forgive you for this little mistake. We'll work through it together. The phone vanished from her hand. Damien held it now, expression still eerily calm as he brought it to his ear. Detective Holloway. His voice remained smooth, almost bored. This is Damien Moretti. Elena won't be getting off at the next stop. She won't be waiting for you, and if you come looking for her, I promise you'll regret wasting my time. Elena heard Grant's muffled shout through the speaker. Damien ended the call, powered off the phone, removed the SIM card with practiced efficiency, and dropped both pieces into his jacket pocket. You shouldn't have done that, Elena whispered. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of. Damien settled back into his seat. Men like Grant Holloway are predictable. They rely on fear and isolation. Remove those tools, and they collapse. He's a cop. He has friends in every department between here and I have more. Damien's dark eyes met hers without blinking. How many times has he hurt you? The question landed like a physical blow. Elena's throat closed. How many times, Damien repeated quietly, has he made you believe you deserved it? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 3 years of carefully constructed walls threatened to crumble under the weight of someone actually seeing her. I don't need your pity, Elena managed. Good. I don't offer pity. Damien leaned forward slightly. I'm offering you a choice. When this train stops, you can run. Find another shelter, another city. Hope he doesn't catch up. Or you can come with me, and I guarantee no one will touch you again. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Something flickered across Damien's expression. Pain, maybe, or memory. Because I failed to help someone once, he said softly. I won't make that mistake again. The train began slowing. Elena's pulse hammered against her ribs as the platform lights appeared through the rain-streaked windows. This wasn't her stop. This was barely a station, just a covered platform in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty fields and darkness. Damien stood, extended his hand again. Decide now. Elena stared at his hand, at the expensive watch on his wrist, at the subtle bulge beneath his jacket that definitely wasn't a phone. Everything about this man screamed danger, but Grant was worse. She took his hand. The platform was deserted. Rain poured through gaps in the rusted roof, creating rivers across cracked concrete. A black town car waited at the far end, engine running, headlights cutting through the storm. Who are you? Elena demanded as they walked. Really? Someone who keeps his promises. Not an answer. Elena's instincts screamed warnings she'd learned to ignore years ago. This was insane. She was getting into a stranger's car in the middle of the night, running from one dangerous man straight into the arms of another. Movement near the tracks. Elena's heart stopped. Grant emerged from the shadows beneath the platform overhang, drenched from the rain, service weapon visible on his hip. His smile could have frozen fire. Baby! He spread his arms wide, voice carrying over the storm. There you are. I've been worried sick. Damien moved smoothly between Elena and her husband. Not aggressive, just present. A wall built from expensive fabric and coiled violence. Detective, Damien's tone could have cut glass. You're out of your jurisdiction. And you're interfering with a domestic situation. Grant's hand drifted toward his weapon. Step aside, Mr. Moretti. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me the moment you threatened someone under my protection. Grant laughed, actually laughed. Your protection? Elena, did this man tell you who he is? Damien Moretti runs half the organized crime in this state. Drugs, guns, murder for hire. Alleged, Damien corrected mildly. All alleged. Meanwhile, the bruises on Elena's body are documented fact. Marital disputes aren't criminal matters. Assault is. Grant's smile vanished. His hand closed around his gun. Elena, car, now. She couldn't move. Her feet had rooted to the concrete, every muscle locked in terror. This was exactly what she'd feared. Grant finding her, dragging her back, making her pay for the audacity of trying to escape. I'm not going with you. The words came out barely louder than the rain. What did you say? I said I'm not going with you. Louder now, stronger. I'm done, Grant. The marriage is over. Grant drew his weapon. The world slowed to syrup-thick seconds. Elena saw the gun rising, saw Grant's finger on the trigger, saw her death written in his eyes. Then Damien moved. He closed the distance impossibly fast, one hand deflecting Grant's wrist while the other drove into his solar plexus. Grant folded with a choked gasp. His gun clattered across the wet concrete. "Don't!" Damien's voice dropped to something inhuman. He pressed Grant against the platform support beam, forearm across his throat. "Don't make me explain to the local police why a detective from out of state died harassing civilians in the middle of the night." Grant wheezed, clawing at Damien's arm. "Elena belongs to herself," Damien continued softly. "Not to you, not to anyone. If you come near her again, if you call her, if you so much as think her name too loudly, I will dismantle your life piece by piece until there's nothing left but regret. Do you understand?" Grant's face purpled. He managed a strangled nod. Damien released him. Grant collapsed to his knees, gasping. "Let's go." Damien didn't look back as he guided Elena toward the waiting car. She climbed inside on autopilot, barely registering the leather seats or the armed driver behind the wheel. Through the rear window, she watched Grant struggle to his feet, watched him retrieve his weapon, watched him stare after them with pure hatred burning in his eyes. "He'll kill me for this," Elena whispered. "He'll try." Damien settled beside her as the car pulled away from the platform. "He'll fail." The storm swallowed the station behind them. Elena pressed her forehead against the cold window glass, watching lightning illuminate empty fields and abandoned buildings. She'd traded one prison for another. That's what this was. It had to be. Except Damien hadn't touched her, hadn't demanded anything, hadn't smiled that horrible smile Grant wore right before everything went wrong. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." Damien loosened his tie, the first crack in his perfect composure. "I own an estate about 40 minutes from here. Gated property, security, medical staff if you need it. You'll have your own space, your own choices." "Why are you doing this?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. Rain drummed against the roof. The driver navigated dark roads with practiced efficiency. "I had a sister," Damien finally said. "Younger. She married a man who seemed perfect on paper. Successful, charming, respected in the community." His jaw tightened. "By the time I realized what he was doing to her behind closed doors, it was too late. She didn't survive the last beating." Elena's breath caught. "So no," Damien continued, voice eerily level. "I don't need to know you to help you. I just need to know you're trying to escape the same kind of monster that killed someone I loved." The words sat between them, heavy with shared understanding. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "Don't be sorry. Be alive." Damien glanced at her, something almost human flickering behind those dark eyes. "That's all that matters now." The estate appeared through the rain like something from a different world. High stone walls, iron gates that opened silently at their approach. Security cameras tracking their progress up the long driveway. The mansion itself sprawled across manicured grounds, all glass and stone and architectural intimidation. Elena had never seen anything like it. The car stopped under a covered entrance. Damien opened her door himself, offering his hand again. She took it. A woman waited inside, older, efficient-looking, with kind eyes that reminded Elena of her mother before cancer took her. "This is Margaret," Damien said. "She runs the household. Margaret, this is Elena. She'll be staying with us. Guest wing, 3rd floor. Everything she needs." Margaret nodded without surprise, as if frightened women appeared regularly. Maybe they did. "Welcome," Margaret said warmly. "Let's get you settled." Elena followed her up a sweeping staircase, through hallways lined with expensive art and fresh flowers, to a door at the end of the 3rd floor corridor. The room beyond could have held her entire apartment 3 times over. King bed, private bathroom, sitting area, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens that disappeared into darkness. "There are clothes in the closet," Margaret explained. "Should fit well enough until we can arrange proper shopping. Bathroom is stocked. If you need anything at all, just pick up the house phone." She gestured to the landline on the nightstand. "I'm extension 3. "Thank you," Elena managed. Margaret paused at the door. "You're safe here. Mr. Moretti takes his promises very seriously." Then she was gone. Elena stood in the center of the enormous room, still clutching her pathetic duffel bag, and tried to process what just happened. 6 hours ago, she'd been trapped in a house with a man who hit her for breathing wrong. Now she stood in a mansion owned by someone Grant called a crime lord. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt the first whisper of something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Elena showered until the hot water ran cold, scrubbing away layers of fear and pain and Grant's touch. She found pajamas in the closet, silk, expensive, definitely not meant for her, and collapsed onto the impossibly soft bed. Sleep came hard and fractured, full of nightmares where Grant found her anyway. Morning arrived gray and stormy. Elena woke disoriented, panic spiking before she remembered where she was. The house phone rang. "Good morning." Margaret's voice carried easy warmth. "Breakfast is ready when you are. Dining room, main floor." Elena found clothes that fit, jeans, a soft sweater, nothing like the carefully controlled wardrobe Grant approved. She navigated downstairs, following the smell of coffee and bacon. The dining room could have seated 20. Damien sat at the head of the table, reading something on his tablet, looking impossibly put together for someone who'd threatened a cop last night. "Sleep well?" he asked without looking up. "No." Elena slid into a chair. Honesty felt strange. "Understandable." Damien set down the tablet. "We need to discuss next steps." "What next steps?" "Legal protection. Restraining orders, though those are largely symbolic. More importantly, I need you to tell me everything about Grant, his routines, his connections, his weaknesses." "Why?" "Because he won't stop coming after you unless I give him something more pressing to worry about." Damien's expression remained neutral. "I'm going to dismantle his life systematically until running after you seems like the worst possible use of his limited remaining resources." Elena stared. "You can't just—" "I can. I will. But I need your help to do it effectively." Something twisted in Elena's chest. 3 years of begging for help, screaming silently behind perfect smiles, and no one noticed. No one cared. Now this stranger offered to wage war on her behalf. "He has friends in internal affairs," Elena heard herself say. "He's avoided investigations before. Complaints disappear. Evidence gets lost." "Good. That gives me somewhere to start." Damien pulled out a phone. Not his, she noticed. A burner. "I have someone who specializes in making corruption visible. They'll need details." Elena spent 2 hours recounting her marriage. Every beating, every threat, every time Grant used his badge to trap her more securely. Damien listened without judgment, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. When she finished, Margaret appeared with lunch. "You did well," Damien said quietly. "That took courage." "It took desperation." Elena pushed food around her plate. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. I handle the unpleasant parts." "I can't just sit here." "You can and you will, at least until we establish security protocols." Damien's tone left no room for argument. "Grant knows my name. He'll research me. When he realizes what he's actually dealing with, he'll either back off or escalate. We need to be ready for both." "And if he escalates?" Damien's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then I demonstrate why people don't cross me twice." The afternoon passed slowly. Elena explored the mansion with Margaret as her guide. Library, home theater, indoor pool, gym, every room more excessive than the last. Armed security moved through the property with professional efficiency, present but not intrusive. "Mr. Moretti doesn't do anything halfway," Margaret explained when Elena commented on the guards. "If he promises protection, you get protection." Evening brought rain again. Elena found herself drawn to the library, surrounded by thousands of books Grant never let her read. She pulled a novel from the shelf. Nothing special, just something with a woman on the cover looking free. "Good choice." Elena jumped. Damien stood in the doorway, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up. He looked almost human. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to startle you." "It's fine." Elena clutched the book. "I can't remember the last time I chose something to read." "Choose as many as you want." Damien crossed to the bar, poured 2 glasses of wine, offered her one. She took it warily. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, rain pattering against the windows. Can I ask you something? Elena finally said. Of course. The things Grant said about you, are they true? Damien considered his wine. Some. I run private security operations that operate in legal gray areas. I have political connections that make certain people nervous. I've made enemies. He met her eyes. But I don't hurt innocent people, Elena. I protect them from those who do. That's a fine line. Yes. He didn't elaborate. Elena studied him, this strange, dangerous man who rescued her from a train platform. Your sister, what was her name? Pain flickered across Damien's face. Sophia. She was 23. She didn't tell anyone what was happening until it was too late. I understand that. Elena's throat tightened. Leaving is harder than people think. Every door feels like a trap. Every phone call feels like betrayal. You start believing maybe you do deserve it. Maybe you didn't deserve it. Damien's voice cut through her spiral. Whatever he told you, whatever he made you believe, you didn't deserve any of it. Elena's eyes burned. She blinked hard. I want to believe that. Then believe it, because it's true. Something shifted between them. Nothing dramatic, just recognition. Two people carrying different scars from similar monsters. Damien's phone buzzed. He checked it, expression darkening. What? Elena demanded. Grant filed a missing person report, listed you as mentally unstable and potentially suicidal. Damien's jaw tightened. He's mobilizing every resource he has. Elena's wine glass slipped from her nerveless fingers. It shattered against the hardwood floor. I need to go, she whispered. If I stay here, I'll what? Deal with an abusive cop trying to weaponize the system? Damien set down his own glass. Elena, this is exactly what I expected, and exactly what I'm prepared to handle. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Damien stepped closer, not threatening, grounding. Grant wants you to panic, wants you to run, because then you're easier to catch. But you're not running anymore. You're standing your ground. I can't. You can. And you will. Because tomorrow, my legal team files restraining orders. The day after, my investigator starts documenting Grant's pattern of abuse. Within a week, Internal Affairs will receive enough evidence to open an investigation so thorough Grant won't have time to breathe, let alone harass you. Elena stared. You can do that? I can do much worse. Damien smiled grimly. But we'll start there and escalate as needed. The next morning brought chaos. Grant showed up at the estate gates with 2 squad cars and a search warrant based on his missing person report. Elena watched from the 3rd-floor window as Damien's lawyers arrived in matching black SUVs and began a legal battle that lasted 3 hours. The police finally left empty-handed, but Grant remained visible through the gate, standing in the rain, staring at the mansion, waiting. He'll never stop, Elena whispered. Margaret squeezed her shoulder. Neither will Mr. Moretti. That night, Elena found Damien in his office, surrounded by documents and security footage. I need to learn to protect myself, she said. He looked up. What? If I'm staying here, if I'm not running anymore, then I need to know how to fight back. Damien studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., meet me in the gym. Elena trained like her life depended on it, because it did. Damien taught her pressure points, defensive moves, how to identify exits and weapons in any room. The physical activity helped burn through the anxiety eating her alive. Grant escalated daily. Anonymous threats appeared on the estate's voicemail. Dead flowers showed up at the gate. His squad car circled the property at odd hours, testing security responses. 3 weeks after Elena arrived at the mansion, Grant made his first serious mistake. He tried bribing one of Damien's security guards to provide internal information. The guard reported it immediately. Damien's response was surgical. Within 24 hours, Grant found himself suspended pending investigation for ethics violations. His personal finances underwent federal audit. 3 of his cases were reopened for evidence tampering. You weren't kidding about dismantling lives, Elena said when Damien explained what he'd done. I promised he'd regret threatening you. I keep my promises. But Grant wasn't done. 2 days later, Elena was returning from an afternoon walk through the estate gardens when a figure stepped from behind the hedge maze. Grant. Somehow he'd breached security. Elena's scream died in her throat. Did you think hiding behind a criminal would save you? Grant advanced slowly. You're still my wife, Elena. Still mine. Elena backed away, training kicking in. Don't panic. Find an exit. Keep distance between. Damien appeared like violence given human form. He tackled Grant into the hedge, both men crashing through branches. They fought with brutal efficiency. Grant with police training, Damien with something darker. Fists connected. Blood flew. Security swarmed the area within seconds, pulling them apart. Grant spat blood, grinning through split lips. You just assaulted a police officer, Moretti. That's going to cost you. You trespassed on private property and threatened a resident. Damien's voice remained eerily calm despite the blood streaming from his temple. That's going to cost you more. The local police arrived. Grant tried spinning his narratives, a concerned husband, dangerous criminal, innocent man attacked. But Damien had security footage from 17 different angles, and Elena finally found her voice. He's lying, she told the officers. He's been stalking me for weeks. He broke into this property to hurt me. Grant's face purpled. Elena, I want a restraining order. I want him arrested. I want him to leave me the hell alone. The words felt like breaking chains. Police led Grant away in handcuffs, still shouting threats Elena refused to hear. When they disappeared down the driveway, Elena's knees buckled. Damien caught her before she hit the ground. It's done, he murmured. You did it. But Elena knew the truth. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. That night, she couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop replaying Grant's rage-twisted face. Couldn't shake the certainty that something worse was coming. She found herself wandering to Damien's office around midnight. He sat behind his desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, bruises already darkening along his knuckles from the fight. Can't sleep? He asked without looking up. Can you? Rarely. He set down whatever he was reading. How are you holding up? I don't know. Elena sank into the chair across from him. Part of me feels stronger than I have in years. Another part keeps waiting for the next disaster. That's normal. Is it? She laughed bitterly. Nothing about any of this is normal, Damien. No, but you're still breathing, still fighting. That's what matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The kind of quiet that felt safe instead of suffocating. Thank you, Elena said softly, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Damien's expression darkened. Grant won't stop. Men like him never do. Which means we need to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than he expects. What does that mean? Damien hesitated. Then he pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Elena opened it. Inside were photographs of Grant with other women, financial records showing suspicious transactions, text messages that outlined a pattern of abuse spanning multiple relationships. Where did you get these? Elena breathed. I have people who find things, and they found everything. Damien leaned forward. This evidence destroys Grant's career, his reputation, his freedom, but using it means declaring total war. Once we move forward, there's no going back. Elena stared at the photographs, at the proof that she'd never been Grant's only victim, at the chance to finally make him pay. Do it, she whispered. You're sure? Completely. Damien nodded once. Then we end this. Permanently. The next morning, Internal Affairs received an anonymous package containing copies of everything Damien had compiled. By afternoon, major news outlets were running stories about Detective Grant Holloway and his pattern of abuse. By evening, federal investigators announced a criminal probe. Grant's entire world collapsed in less than 24 hours. Elena watched it unfold from the safety of Damien's office, feeling something she couldn't quite name. Not joy, not satisfaction, just release. He can't hurt me anymore, she said quietly. No, Damien stood beside her. He can't. But neither of them noticed the single missed call on Grant's confiscated phone, or the contact name listed. Backup plan. Grant's arrest lasted exactly 48 hours before his lawyer, some expensive suit from the city, got him released on bail. Elena watched the news footage from Damien's office, her coffee going cold in her hands as Grant walked down the courthouse steps, bruised but grinning like a man who'd just won something. "He looks too confident," she said. Damien stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight. He shouldn't have made bail, not with the evidence stacked against him. Then why did he? Someone intervened, someone with enough influence to convince a judge that Detective Holloway poses no flight risk. Damien's phone buzzed. He read the message, expression darkening. "And I just found out who." Elena turned. "Who?" "Captain Richard Voss, Grant's supervisor for the past 7 years. Apparently he personally vouched for Grant's character and posted the bail himself." Something cold slithered down Elena's spine. Grant talked about Voss sometimes. They go fishing together. Their wives were friends. Were? Voss's wife died 2 years ago. Car accident. Elena set down her coffee. Grant attended the funeral, brought casseroles for weeks after. Damien's eyes narrowed. He's building loyalty, making himself indispensable to people with power. So what do? We dig into Captain Voss, find out exactly what Grant has on him that's worth protecting a man facing federal charges. But before Damien's investigators could start, something else exploded. The next morning, Elena woke to Margaret pounding on her bedroom door. "Turn on the news," Margaret said, voice shaking. "Channel 7, now." Elena grabbed the remote with trembling fingers. The screen lit up, showing a female reporter standing outside the estate gates, rain pouring behind her. Allegations surfaced this morning that Elena Vale, the woman at the center of the Detective Holloway abuse case, may have fabricated her claims with help from alleged crime figure Damien Moretti. Sources close to the investigation suggest Mrs. Vale and Mr. Moretti were romantically involved before her marriage to Detective Holloway, raising questions about Elena dropped the remote. Lies. All lies. But they sounded so plausible, so carefully constructed, that anyone watching would believe them. She ran downstairs, found Damien already in his office, surrounded by lawyers and security personnel, everyone shouting over each other. "Media blackout. We need to control the narrative. Subpoena every source. Find out who planted this story. Elena's credibility is destroyed if this gains traction, but enough!" Damien's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone fell silent. He looked at Elena standing in the doorway. "Give us the room." The office emptied in seconds. "I didn't do this," Elena said immediately. "I never met you before that train. You know that." "I know." Damien's calm felt more frightening than anger. "But Grant found someone willing to lie under oath about our relationship history, which means he's got leverage over a witness, probably threatened them or paid them off. Who would lie about something like this? Someone desperate enough to believe Grant's promises." Damien pulled up security footage on his computer. "We need to trace where this story originated, find the source, discredit them before this spreads further." But the damage was already done. By afternoon, 3 of Elena's former colleagues from the university where she used to teach had given interviews suggesting she'd always been unstable and prone to drama. None of them mentioned that Grant had isolated her from them years ago. None of them acknowledged the bruises they'd pretended not to see. Elena watched herself get dismantled on national television, her truth twisted into convenient fiction. "They're destroying me," she whispered. "They're trying." Damien stood beside her. "But we're not done fighting." That evening, one of Damien's investigators burst into the office without knocking. "We found something." The man, Marcus, Elena remembered, looked like he'd been running. "Captain Voss, he's not just protecting Grant out of loyalty." "What did you find?" Damien demanded. Marcus pulled out a folder thick with documents. 3 years ago, Voss was under investigation for evidence tampering. Case involved a councilman's son who killed someone in a DUI. The evidence disappeared. Investigation went nowhere. "Let me guess," Damien said coldly. "Grant made the evidence disappear." "Exactly. And kept proof of it. Insurance policy." Marcus spread photos across the desk. "Grant's been holding this over Voss ever since. Voss does what Grant wants, or his career ends in prison." Elena felt sick. "So Voss planted the story about me and Damien?" "Probably. Or arranged for it to be planted." Marcus hesitated. "There's more. The witness who's claiming you and Moretti had a prior relationship? Her name is Jessica Chen. She worked at the shelter you tried staying at 6 months ago. The memory hit Elena like a fist. 6 months ago. Her first escape attempt. She'd made it to a women's shelter before Grant tracked her down. Jessica had been the intake coordinator who'd helped her that night.
He got to her, Elena breathed. Grant threatened her or paid her, or both, probably. Damien's voice had gone deadly quiet. Find Jessica Chen. Offer her protection and triple whatever Grant paid her. I want the truth on record by tomorrow. Marcus nodded and left. Elena sank into a chair, head in her hands. This is never going to end. Every time we gain ground, he gets desperate, makes mistakes, and desperate people are easier to destroy. Damien crouched in front of her. Look at me. She did. Grant is losing. Everything he's doing right now is panic. The lies, the media manipulation, calling in favors from corrupt cops, that's not strength. That's a dying animal trying to take everyone down with it. What if he succeeds? He won't. Damien's eyes held absolute certainty. Because I won't let him. But that night, lying alone in her enormous bedroom, Elena couldn't shake the fear crawling through her chest. Grant had always been 3 steps ahead, always found ways to trap her more securely. What if this time was no different? She must have fallen asleep eventually because she woke to the sound of breaking glass. The security alarm screamed through the mansion. Red emergency lights pulsed in her room. Elena rolled out of bed, heart hammering, and grabbed her phone. No signal. The landline was dead too. Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside her door. She pressed her ear against the wood, trying to hear over the alarm. South entrance breached. Multiple targets, at least 4. Get Moretti. Lock down the 3rd floor. Multiple targets. Grant hadn't come alone. Elena's training kicked in. She shoved her dresser against the door, then ran to the window. 3 stories down. No way to climb. The gardens below looked empty except for movement near the hedge maze. 2 figures in dark clothing moving with military precision. This wasn't just Grant. This was planned, coordinated. Her door handle rattled. Elena grabbed the only weapon she could find, a heavy glass vase from the nightstand. She pressed herself against the wall beside the door, pulse roaring in her ears. Elena Vale. The voice came muffled through the wood. Male. Unfamiliar. We're not here to hurt you. Captain Voss sent us to bring you in for questioning. Lies. Voss had no authority here. No legal right to send anyone. Open the door, the voice continued. Make this easy. Elena's grip tightened on the vase. Through the wood, she heard hushed conversation, then something metal sliding into the lock. They were picking it. She looked around frantically. The bathroom had a small window. Maybe she could... The lock clicked. The dresser scraped as they shoved the door open. 2 men in tactical gear pushed inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Elena swung the vase with everything she had. It connected with the first man's temple. He went down hard, blood streaming. The second man lunged for her. Elena ducked, rolled, came up near the bathroom door. Stop running, he growled, pulling something from his belt. Not a gun, a taser. She slammed the bathroom door and locked it. The window was tiny, but maybe she could fit through if she... The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Elena barely squeezed through the window before hands grabbed her ankle. She kicked backward, felt her heel connect with flesh. Someone cursed viciously. Then she was falling, sliding down the steep roof below her bathroom, tiles scraping her skin through her pajamas. She hit the rain gutter hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. For a terrible moment, she thought she'd keep sliding straight off the edge. Then her fingers found the metal, gripped tight. Above, a face appeared in the broken bathroom window. The man with the taser. Below, a 3-story drop onto stone patio. Nowhere to go, the man called down. Just hold on. We'll pull you up. Like hell. Elena swung her legs, building momentum, then let go of the gutter and dropped. She hit the patio wrong, ankle twisting beneath her. Pain exploded white-hot up her leg. She bit back a scream and forced herself to move, limping toward the gardens. Shouts behind her, flashlight beams cutting through darkness. She made it to the hedge maze before they caught up. The familiar paths swallowed her. Damien had walked her through here dozens of times over the past weeks, teaching her the layout for exactly this reason. Left at the fountain, right at the sundial, straight through to the garden shed where extra security equipment was stored. Her ankles screamed with each step. Blood soaked through her torn pajama pants, but she could hear them crashing through the hedges behind her, getting closer.
The shed appeared ahead. Elena threw herself inside, gasping, and slammed the door. No lock. Of course no lock. She shoved a workbench against it instead. Her hands found a heavy wrench in the darkness. Better than nothing. Footsteps approached, stopped outside. "We know you're in there," the same voice from her bedroom. "Captain Voss wants to talk. That's all. You're not under arrest?" Elena pressed her back against the far wall, wrench raised. "If we have to come in there, this gets ugly, so why don't you—" Gunfire erupted from somewhere near the mansion, 3 sharp cracks, then sustained automatic fire that made Elena's ears ring even from here. The footsteps outside the shed scrambled away. Elena waited in the darkness, counting her ragged breaths. 1 minute, 2. The shooting stopped. Silence crashed down, broken only by the alarm still wailing from the house. Then the shed door opened. Elena swung the wrench. Damien caught it mid-swing, his hand closing over hers. Blood streaked his shirt. Bruises darkened his jaw, but his eyes held that terrible calm. "It's me," he said quietly. "You're safe." Elena collapsed against him, wrench clattering to the floor. What happened? 4 men breached the perimeter. Professional operators, not cops. 2 are in custody, 1 escaped, 1's dead. Damien's voice stayed level despite the words. "They came for you specifically. They said Captain Voss sent them." "He probably did, using his police contacts to hire private security for an illegal extraction." Damien helped her limp out of the shed. "We need to get you inside, you're bleeding." The mansion looked like a war zone. Broken windows, bullet holes in the stone facade. Security personnel everywhere, coordinating response. Paramedics treating injured guards. Margaret met them at the door, face pale, but composed. "Guest wing is secured," she reported. "Medical bay is ready." Elena found herself in a room she hadn't seen before, equipped like a hospital, complete with monitors and medical supplies. A doctor appeared and began examining her ankle while Damien stood watch, phone pressed to his ear. Police response time was deliberately slow. Someone stalled dispatch. "Get me everything on Captain Voss, financial records, phone logs, every contact for the past 3 years. And find Grant Holloway. I want to know where he was during the breach." The doctor confirmed her ankle was sprained, not broken. He bandaged the cuts on her legs and arms, gave her something for the pain. "Rest," he ordered. "Keep weight off that ankle for at least a week." Fat chance. Elena waited until he left, then turned to Damien. "This was a kidnapping attempt." "Yes." "Grant's escalating." "Yes." "So what do we do now?" Damien's expression went cold. "Now I stop playing defense." Over the next 3 days, Damien dismantled Captain Voss's life with surgical precision. The evidence tampering case got reopened. Federal investigators started asking uncomfortable questions. Media attention shifted from Elena to police corruption. Voss held a press conference trying to defend himself. It didn't work. By the end, he looked like exactly what he was, a desperate man caught protecting a monster. Grant, meanwhile, vanished. His house stood empty. His car was found abandoned near the docks. Every contact turned up nothing. "He's preparing something," Elena said, pacing Damien's office despite her injured ankle. "He doesn't just disappear. I have every available resource searching for him." Damien looked exhausted for the first time since they'd met. But he's had years building contingencies, false identities, hidden assets. He knew this day might come. Then we're just waiting for him to strike again. Unless we draw him out first. Damien pulled up something on his computer. "There's an art gala downtown next week. High-profile charity event. Mayor will be there, local celebrities, media coverage. You want to use me as bait. I want to show Grant that you're not hiding, that you're strong enough to live your life despite his threats." Damien met her eyes. "But only if you're willing. I won't force you into the open." Elena thought about the woman she'd been 4 weeks ago. Terrified, broken, convinced she'd never escape. That woman was gone. "I'll do it," she said. The gala was held in a converted warehouse downtown. All exposed brick and expensive lighting, filled with people who wore more money than Elena had ever owned. She felt ridiculous in the designer dress Damien's stylist had chosen, standing at the edge of the crowd while cameras flashed. Damien stayed close but not suffocating, letting her navigate the space at her own pace. Security personnel dressed as waitstaff circulated through the room. Every exit was monitored. Every guest had been vetted. Elena was talking to the museum director about impressionist paintings when she felt it. That crawling sensation of being watched. She turned slowly, scanning faces. Everyone looked normal, wealthy, harmless. Then she saw him. Grant stood near the bar, dressed in an expensive suit she'd never seen before, holding a champagne glass like he belonged here. Their eyes locked across the crowded room. He smiled. Elena's breath stopped. She reached for Damien, found his arm, squeezed hard. "He's here," she whispered. Damien followed her gaze. His entire body went rigid. He spoke quietly into his wrist mic, alerting security. Grant raised his champagne glass in a mock toast. Then he set it down and started walking toward them through the crowd. "Don't let him see you panic," Damien murmured. "That's what he wants." Elena forced herself to breathe, stand straight, meet Grant's approach with her head up. He stopped 5 feet away, that terrible smile still in place. "Elena," he said warmly, like they were old friends. "You look beautiful. That dress is stunning. How did you get in here?" Her voice came out steady. "Good. I was invited. I'm still a decorated police detective, sweetheart. People respect that." His gaze slid to Damien. "Though I see you've moved on quickly, makes me wonder if those allegations about your prior relationship were accurate after all." "Walk away, Grant." Damien's voice could have cut steel. "This is a public event. I have every right to be here." Grant looked back at Elena, something dangerous flickering behind his pleasant expression. "We should talk. Clear the air. There are things you don't know about your new protector." "I know everything I need to know." "Do you?" Grant leaned closer, voice dropping. "Did he tell you about the 3 people who died in suspicious accidents after crossing him? Or the federal investigation into his operations that mysteriously disappeared 2 years ago? Or—" "Stop." Elena's hands clenched into fists. "You don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to manipulate me or scare me or— I'm trying to save you." Grant's mask cracked slightly, showing genuine anger beneath. "You think Moretti cares about you? You're a project, a way to get back at law enforcement. Once you're no longer useful, he'll—" Damien moved like controlled violence, putting himself between Elena and Grant. "You have 10 seconds to leave," he said quietly, "or I'll have you removed." "You'll have me removed?" Grant laughed. "Who do you think you are? You're a criminal, Moretti. Everything you've built is dirty money and blood, and eventually everyone realizes—" Security appeared at Grant's elbows. 2 large men dressed as guests. "Sir," one said politely, "you need to leave." Grant shrugged them off. "Don't touch me. I'll go." He looked past Damien to Elena. "When you're ready to come home, baby, I'll be waiting. I always forgive you." Then he walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Elena's legs threatened to give out. Damien guided her to a quiet corner, away from curious eyes. "Breathe," he instructed. "Just breathe." She tried. Her lungs wouldn't cooperate. The room spun sickeningly. "I can't do this," she gasped. "He's everywhere, Damien. No matter what we do, he's always—" "Look at me." Damien's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You faced him. You didn't run. You didn't break. That's everything. It doesn't feel like everything. Because you're still measuring yourself by his standards, but you're not his victim anymore, Elena. You're a survivor who just stood in a crowded room and told her abuser to go to hell." The words slowly penetrated her panic. She had done that. She'd faced Grant without falling apart. "He said things about you," Elena whispered. "About people dying. Some of it's true. Most is exaggeration." Damien's expression went carefully neutral. "I've made enemies. Some of them died. I won't pretend to be innocent." "Did you kill them?" "Not personally, but I ordered things that led to their deaths." He held her gaze steadily. "I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done terrible things to terrible people. If that's too much for you, I understand." Elena studied him. This dangerous, complicated man who'd saved her life and destroyed Grant's career and just admitted to having blood on his hands. "I don't need you to be good," she heard herself say. "I just need you to be honest." Something shifted in Damien's expression. Relief, maybe. Or recognition.
Then I'll be honest, he said quietly. Grant isn't going to stop. The restraining orders, the investigations, the public pressure. None of it matters to him anymore. He's past rationality, past self-preservation, which means the next time he comes for you, he'll be willing to die to take you with him. So what do? We prepare for the worst and hope he makes a mistake first.
They left the gala early. The car ride back to the estate felt endless. Elena's mind replaying every word Grant had spoken, every threat hidden in pleasant conversation. When they arrived, the mansion felt less like sanctuary and more like a well-decorated cage. Elena couldn't sleep that night. She kept seeing Grant smile, kept hearing his voice calling her baby like he still owned her. Around 2 a.m, she gave up and went downstairs. Found Damien in the library, surrounded by case files and security reports. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Not lately." He gestured to the couch. "Join me?" She curled up on the opposite end, pulling a blanket around herself. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that felt safe instead of suffocating. "Can I ask you something?" Elena finally said. "Always?" "Your sister, Sophia, what was she like?" Damien was quiet for so long, Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down his file. "She was brilliant, studying architecture at university. She wanted to design museums." His voice went soft with memory. "She met her husband at a gallery opening. He seemed perfect, successful, charming, from a good family. We all loved him at first." "When did you realize?" "Too late. She hid it well. Makeup covering bruises, excuses for canceled plans. By the time I understood what was happening, she was terrified to leave, convinced he'd kill her if she tried." Elena's throat tightened. "What happened?" "She finally worked up the courage to tell me everything. I was arranging her escape when he found out." Damien's hands clenched. He beat her to death in their apartment, called it a tragic accident. The police investigated for 2 days before closing the case. "Damien, I killed him." The words came flat, final. 3 months later. Made it look like a robbery gone wrong. And I've spent the past 5 years making sure no one else's sister dies the same way. Elena should have been horrified, should have felt afraid. Instead, she understood completely. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. For believing me. For fighting when no one else did." She met his eyes across the dimly lit room. "You gave me my life back. You took it back yourself. I just provided the resources. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did." Elena shifted closer. "You saved me, Damien. In every way someone can be saved." The air between them changed, thickened. Damien looked at her like he was seeing something he'd been trying not to notice. "Elena, I know this is complicated," she said quickly. "I know the timing is terrible, and I'm probably confused, and you're trying to protect me, and that's not why I'm hesitating." Damien's voice came rough. "I'm hesitating because you deserve better than a man who solves problems with violence. You deserve someone who hasn't spent years becoming the thing he claims to fight against." "What if I don't want better? What if I just want honest? Then I'll be honest." He moved closer, voice dropping. "From the moment I saw you on that train, terrified and brave and trying so hard not to break, I wanted to destroy everyone who'd ever hurt you. That's not hero behavior, Elena. That's obsession. Maybe I need obsession right now." Her heart hammered. "Maybe I need someone willing to burn the world down to keep me safe. That's trauma talking, not real feeling. Don't tell me what I feel." Fire flared in her chest. "I've spent 3 years being told what I think, what I want, what I deserve. You don't get to do that too." Damien went very still. "You're right. I'm sorry." Elena stood, ankle protesting, and crossed to where he sat. "I know this is messy. I know I'm still figuring out who I am outside of fear. But I also know that when Grant appeared at that gala, the only thing I could think was that I refused to lose you. That has to mean something. It means you're brave beyond measure." Damien looked up at her, something raw in his expression. "It also means we should be careful. Take this slow. Make sure—" Elena kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't think, just leaned down and pressed her lips to his, pouring 3 weeks of fear and gratitude and complicated feeling into the connection. Damien went rigid with surprise.
Then his hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite their capacity for violence, and he kissed her back with heartbreaking tenderness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world felt different somehow. "We shouldn't have done that," Damien whispered against her forehead. "Probably not." "Grant will use it against you if he finds out." "I don't care." "You should care. It compromises everything we've built. Makes you look exactly like the lying adulteress he's been claiming." "Damien." Elena pulled back to meet his eyes. "Stop protecting me from my own choices. I kissed you because I wanted to. Whatever consequences come from that, I'll handle them." He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay, but we still need to be smart about this, careful." "Agreed." They stood there in the library, not quite touching but not moving apart either, until Elena's ankle forced her to sit back down. The rest of the night passed in quiet conversation. Damien told her about building his empire from nothing. Elena shared dreams about writing she'd abandoned years ago. They talked until dawn painted the windows gold, learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with fear or rescue. When Margaret appeared with breakfast, she took one look at them and smiled knowingly. "I'll set 2 places," was all she said. The next 3 days felt almost normal. Elena worked with Damien's lawyers on her testimony for Grant's trial. She started physical therapy for her ankle. She even began writing again, just fragments at first, but something. Damien gave her space while staying close enough to feel safe. They didn't kiss again, didn't push what had started in the library, just existed together. Until the 4th morning when Marcus burst into breakfast looking like death. "We have a problem," he said. "A big one." Damien set down his coffee. "What happened?" "Grant posted bail again. Different judge, different lawyer, but he's out." "That's not possible. The evidence against him. Doesn't matter if the judge is compromised." Marcus pulled out his tablet. "Judge Morrison. 3 months ago, his daughter got arrested for drug possession. Charges were mysteriously dropped despite substantial evidence. Grant was the arresting officer." "Leverage," Damien said coldly. "Grant has leverage over the judge." "Gets worse. Grant's passport got flagged at the airport 2 hours ago. He was trying to leave the country." Elena's blood went cold. "Trying to?" "TSA stopped him, held him for questioning, but his lawyer got him released citing illegal detention." Marcus looked sick. "He's in the wind now. No ankle monitor because he posted bail. No tracking on his phone. He could be anywhere." The security alarm started wailing. Everyone froze. Then Damien was moving, pulling Elena toward his office, shouting orders at security. Margaret appeared from somewhere, face pale but calm, guiding Elena toward the panic room. "What's happening?" Elena demanded. "Perimeter breach," Margaret said. Multiple contacts. We need to get you secured." They reached Damien's office. He pressed his hand to a panel beside his desk. Part of the wall slid open, revealing a reinforced room beyond. Screens showing every security camera, emergency supplies, communications equipment. "Inside," Damien ordered. "Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Margaret. Not security, not police, no one." "You're not coming?" Elena's heart stopped. "I need to coordinate our response." "Then I'm staying with you." "Elena." "No." She planted her feet. "I'm not hiding in a box while you fight my battles anymore." Damien looked like he wanted to argue. Then the sound of shattering glass echoed through the mansion. "Fine, but you stay behind me. You don't engage. And if I tell you to run, you run." His eyes burned into hers. "Promise me." "I promise." They moved through the mansion together, Damien slightly ahead, weapon drawn. Elena's ankle screamed with each step. She ignored it. The destruction became visible as they approached the main entrance. Windows blown out, bullet holes stitching across walls, security personnel taking cover behind furniture. "Status," Damien barked. 6 contacts, someone shouted back. 3 at the south entrance, 3 at the garage. Professional operators. They're trying to box us in. "Grant?" Damien demanded. "No visual confirmation yet." Elena pressed against the wall beside Damien, heart trying to climb out of her throat. This was real. This was actually happening. Grant had brought an army to... The lights died. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. But for 3 seconds, the darkness was absolute. In those 3 seconds,
Elena heard something that froze her blood. Grant's voice, distorted through some kind of speaker system, echoing through the entire mansion. "Hello, baby? Did you miss me?" Grant's voice echoed through the darkened mansion like something crawling from a grave, distorted and amplified until it filled every corner of the space Elena had foolishly believed was safe. "I know you can hear me, baby. I know you're scared, but this is all your fault. You made me do this." Damien's hand closed around Elena's wrist, pulling her lower behind the overturned furniture. His weapon tracked movements in the red emergency lighting, every muscle coiled with lethal intent. "How is he broadcasting through our system?" Damien hissed into his wrist mic. Static crackled back. Then Marcus's voice, tight with panic. "He's hardwired into the backup generator. Must have done it during the perimeter breach. We can't shut him down without killing all power." "Then find him and shoot him." Gunfire erupted from somewhere near the kitchen. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Grant's voice continued, maddeningly calm. "You thought you could hide from me behind money and lawyers and some criminal's promises? You're mine, Elena. You've always been mine. Till death do us part, remember?" Elena's hands shook so violently she had to press them against the floor to keep them still. This was worse than her nightmares. This was Grant with nothing left to lose, willing to burn everything down just to prove he still owned her. "We need to move," Damien said. "Get you to the panic room while my team—" "South stairwell is compromised," someone shouted through the chaos. "They're pushing toward the main floor." "North stairwell?" "Blocked. They herded us exactly where they wanted." Damien cursed viciously. He pulled Elena to her feet, already calculating alternate routes. "Kitchen service elevator. It'll take us straight to the third floor. Move." They ran through the mansion, keeping low, Elena's injured ankle threatening to give out with each step. Behind them, the sounds of battle intensified. Ahead, the kitchen loomed dark and empty, industrial appliances gleaming dully in the emergency lights. The service elevator sat in the far corner, door already open like a waiting mouth. "Something's wrong," Elena whispered. "I know." Damien swept his weapon across the space. "But we're out of options." They moved toward the elevator, 5 feet away. 3. Elena's instincts screamed warnings she couldn't articulate. Then movement exploded from behind the industrial refrigerator. A man in tactical gear materialized, weapon raised. Damien fired first. The shot went wide as he shoved Elena sideways. They crashed into a prep station. Pots and pans clattered to the tile floor. The tactical operator advanced, weapon tracking. Damien rolled, fired twice more. Both shots connected. The man dropped. "Go," Damien commanded. "Elevator, now." Elena scrambled to her feet and lunged for the open door. Her fingers found the button panel. She slammed her palm against the third-floor selection. Nothing happened. She pressed again and again. The elevator refused to move. "It's disabled," she gasped. "Then we take the stairs." Damien grabbed her hand, already moving toward the back exit. They made it 3 steps before the kitchen's main entrance erupted with gunfire. Bullets punched through the swinging doors, chewing up walls and counters. Damien dragged Elena behind the massive center island, both of them pressed flat against the tile. "This is getting tiresome," Grant's voice boomed through the speakers. "How many of your people have to die before you face me like a man, Moretti?" Damien's expression went cold as death. He spoke into his wrist mic. "Status on Grant's location? Still can't pinpoint him. He's moving through the building, staying off camera." "Then bring down the whole damn system. Cut power to everything except life support. That includes the security feeds. We'll be blind. Do it." The emergency lights died. Absolute darkness crashed down, broken only by muzzle flashes from the ongoing firefight near the entrance. Elena couldn't see her own hands. Couldn't see Damien beside her. Couldn't see anything except brief strobing glimpses when weapons fired. "Stay close," Damien breathed against her ear. "Don't make a sound." They moved through the darkness by touch and memory. Elena's hands found walls, door frames, anything solid to guide her. Her breathing sounded impossibly loud in her own ears. They reached what felt like a hallway. Damien pulled her into a side room, a pantry, Elena realized from the shelves pressing against her back. He positioned her in the corner, then pressed something into her hands. A gun. Heavy, cold, terrifying. "Safety's off," Damien whispered. "Point and squeeze if anyone comes through that door who isn't me. Understand? Don't leave me."
I need to draw them away from you. Lead them somewhere I control. His hand found her face in the darkness, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Trust me. Then he was gone, slipping out of the pantry like smoke. Elena stood in the pitch black, both hands wrapped around the weapon Damien had given her, and tried not to scream. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow that might be movement sent her pulse skyrocketing. Minutes crawled past, or maybe hours. Time lost meaning in the dark. Then footsteps approached the pantry. Slow, deliberate. Boot heels clicking against tile. Elena raised the gun with trembling hands, pointing it toward where she thought the door was. The footsteps stopped right outside. Elena, Grant's voice, no longer amplified through speakers. Just him, right there. I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing. She bit down on her tongue to keep silent. This is ridiculous, baby. We're married. We're supposed to work through problems together. His tone shifted to something almost gentle. I forgive you for running. I forgive you for lying about me. I even forgive you for fucking Damien Moretti. We can put this all behind us. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. You just need to come home with me. Tonight. Right now. And all this stops. No more violence. No more people dying because you couldn't accept that you belong to me. I don't belong to anyone, Elena whispered before she could stop herself. The door exploded inward. Grant's silhouette filled the frame, backlit by a flashlight. Elena fired blindly, once, twice. The muzzle flash lit his face for a fraction of a second. Rage and something worse, something hungry. Both shots missed. Grant lunged into the pantry. Elena tried to fire again, but he grabbed her wrist, twisting until the gun clattered to the floor. Then his other hand closed around her throat. There you are. His breath was hot against her face. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. Her hands clawed at his grip, finding nothing but unyielding strength. I gave you everything, Grant hissed. A home, security, love. And you threw it away for what? For him? His fingers tightened. You're going to watch him die, Elena. Then you're coming home, and I'm going to spend the rest of your life teaching you why running was a mistake. Black spots danced across Elena's vision. Her lungs burned. She was going to die in this pantry, choking on her own failed escape. Then light flooded the space. Damien stood in the doorway, weapon raised, absolutely steady. Let her go, detective. Grant's grip loosened slightly. Not enough. His other hand moved to his belt, pulled something free. The cold press of metal touched Elena's temple. A gun. Drop yours, Grant commanded, or I paint the walls with her brain. You won't shoot her. Damien's voice carried absolute certainty. Because the moment she dies, you lose your leverage, and I put 3 bullets in your skull before her body hits the floor. Try me. The standoff stretched. Elena's vision swam. Her oxygen-starved brain couldn't process what was happening. Then Grant made his mistake. He shifted his weight, preparing to adjust his aim toward Damien. Damien fired. The shot took Grant in the shoulder. He staggered backward, grip on Elena's throat releasing. She collapsed, gasping, vision clearing just in time to see Grant raise his own weapon. 2 more shots cracked through the pantry. Grant jerked with each impact, blood blooming across his chest. He looked down at the spreading stains, expression more surprised than pained. You shot me, he said wonderingly. Yes. Damien advanced, weapon still trained. And I'll do it again if you move. Grant swayed. His gun slipped from his fingers. He looked at Elena, still crumpled on the floor, and something like grief crossed his face. I loved you, he whispered. Why wasn't that enough? Then his knees buckled. He collapsed against the pantry shelves, sliding down to sit in a spreading pool of his own blood. Elena stared at him. The man who'd terrorized her for 3 years. The man who'd taken everything from her. He looked smaller somehow, pathetic, human. Elena. Damien crouched beside her, hands gentle as he checked her throat. Look at me. Not him. Me. She dragged her eyes away from Grant's dying form. It's over, Damien said softly. He can't hurt you anymore. Is he? Her voice came out wrecked. Is he dead? Not yet, but soon.
Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer, the cavalry arriving too late. Margaret appeared in the doorway with a medical kit. She moved to Elena's side, professional and efficient, checking vitals and examining the bruises already forming around her throat. Security personnel flooded the room, securing Grant, calling for paramedics. Elena watched it all happen with a strange detachment, like she was floating somewhere outside her body. Then Marcus burst in, face sheet white, tablet clutched in his shaking hands. "We have a problem," he said. "A massive problem." Damien stood, expression going cold. "What now?" "I've been tracing how Grant got inside, how he knew our security protocols, how he managed to disable systems and predict our response." Marcus's voice shook. "Someone fed him everything, building layouts, guard rotations, emergency procedures, everything. Obviously. We suspected an inside leak weeks ago. It wasn't a leak." Marcus pulled up something on his tablet, hands trembling so badly he almost dropped it. It was a wholesale information transfer, gigabytes of data sent directly from inside this house to Grant's encrypted server. "From whose device?" Marcus turned the tablet around. Elena's stomach dropped. The screen showed data logs, transfer records, timestamps, all pointing to a single source, Margaret's personal laptop. Elena looked at the older woman still kneeling beside her, efficient hands applying bandages. Margaret, who'd welcomed her that first night, who'd made her feel safe, who'd been nothing but kind for weeks. Margaret met her eyes steadily. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "but you need to understand something. My daughter died because of Damien Moretti's business practices 3 years ago. She worked at one of his legitimate companies. She witnessed something she shouldn't have, and someone made sure she never talked." The world tilted sideways. "That's not," Damien started. "It is." Margaret stood, no longer gentle, no longer motherly. "Her name was Rebecca Chen. She managed accounts at your private security firm. She discovered you were laundering money through nonprofit organizations. When she threatened to report it, someone ran her off the road, made it look like a drunk driving accident. I didn't order, but you knew about it." Margaret's voice cracked. "You knew what your people did and you protected them anyway, because the money was more important than one woman's life." Elena's mind raced. Rebecca Chen. Jessica Chen. The woman from the shelter who Grant had bribed to lie about Elena's relationship with Damien. "Jessica is your daughter," Elena breathed. "My other daughter, the one who didn't die because she learned to keep her mouth shut and do what dangerous men tell her." Margaret's hands clenched into fists. "When Detective Holloway approached me 6 months ago, offering money to help him track his runaway wife, I said no. Then he showed me proof of what Moretti did to Rebecca, showed me how many other lives this man has destroyed, and suddenly helping Grant find you seemed like justice." "You don't know what you've done," Damien said, voice deadly quiet. "I know exactly what I've done. I gave an abused woman back to her husband because her new protector is worse than her old abuser." Margaret looked at Elena. "I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm sorry Grant couldn't control himself. But Damien Moretti isn't your savior. He's a monster wearing an expensive suit." Security moved toward Margaret. She didn't resist as they pulled her arms behind her back, securing her wrists. "Check on Grant," Damien ordered someone. "Make sure he's stable enough to talk." 2 men moved to where Grant still slumped against the pantry shelves. One of them checked his pulse, then went very still. "He's gone," the man said. "Bled out. He's dead." The words echoed in the sudden silence. Dead. Grant was dead. Elena should have felt relief, should have felt free. Instead, she felt nothing but cold spreading through her chest. "Get Margaret out of here," Damien said. "Lock her in the safe room until the police arrive." They dragged Margaret away. She didn't struggle, didn't protest, just looked at Elena with something like pity as she disappeared into the hallway. Paramedics rushed in, surrounding Grant's body, confirming what security had already reported. Dead on scene. The cause of death clear from the bullet wounds in his chest. Police followed minutes later. They separated everyone, took statements, photographed the scene. Elena sat on a kitchen stool, wrapped in a shock blanket, answering the same questions over and over in a voice that didn't sound like hers. Yes, Grant had broken into the mansion. Yes, he'd threatened to kill her. Yes, Damien had shot him in self-defense. The detective taking her statement kept glancing at the bruises on her throat, the terror still written across her face. His expression suggested he believed every word. Dawn arrived gray and exhausted. The police finally cleared the scene, taking Margaret and Grant's body with them. Security personnel began cleaning up the destruction, boarding broken windows, patching bullet holes, removing blood-stained sections of floor. Elena found herself back in Damien's office, staring at nothing while he handled phone calls in rapid succession. Lawyers, police contacts, damage control. When he finally hung up, the silence felt crushing. "Margaret will be charged as an accessory," Damien said quietly. "The evidence is overwhelming."
"Her daughter," Elena whispered. "Rebecca. Did you really—"
"I didn't order her death, but I did know about it after the fact, and I protected the man responsible because he was useful to my operations." Damien's expression remained carefully neutral. "So Margaret isn't wrong. I am responsible. How many others? How many what? How many other Rebecca Chens are there? How many lives have you destroyed?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and crossed to the window, looking out at the damaged grounds. "More than I can count," he said finally. "I've spent years telling myself I only hurt people who deserve it, that my empire exists to protect the vulnerable from worse monsters. But the truth is messier. Collateral damage happens. Innocent people get caught in crossfire, and I live with that by focusing on the ones I do save. Like me. Like you." Elena studied him. This man who'd saved her life and revealed himself to be exactly what Grant had accused him of being: a criminal, a killer. Someone who built empires on blood and justified it with selective mercy. "I don't know what to feel right now," she said. "Feel whatever you need to feel." Damien turned to face her. "If you want to leave, I'll arrange safe housing somewhere far from here. New identity if necessary. You'll never have to see me again." "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter. You're finally free, Elena. Free from Grant. Free from immediate danger. What happens next is entirely your choice." The word choice hung in the air between them. Elena turned it over in her mind. She'd spent 3 years with no choices, then weeks believing Damien offered freedom. Now she understood he'd simply given her a different cage, prettier but no less confining. Except that wasn't quite true either, because Damien was offering to let her walk away, offering to give her the one thing Grant never did, the actual freedom to choose. "I need time," she heard herself say, "to process everything, to figure out who I am outside of fear and rescue and—" Her voice broke. "I just need time." "Take all the time you need." Damien's expression remained carefully neutral. "Your room is still yours. The estate is secure. Whatever you decide, you're safe here." Elena nodded and left his office. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor on autopilot, her injured ankle throbbing with each step. The guest room looked exactly as she'd left it, untouched by the violence that had consumed the rest of the mansion. She collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the past 6 hours. Grant was dead. She should feel something about that. Relief, grief, anything. Instead, she just felt hollow. She must have slept eventually because she woke to afternoon light streaming through the windows. Her phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Damien's lawyers coordinating her official statement, a few from reporters who'd somehow gotten her number, one from a blocked number that simply read, "Your husband is dead because of choices you made. I hope it was worth it." Elena deleted it without responding. She showered until the hot water ran cold, scrubbing away blood and gunpowder residue and the memory of Grant's hands around her throat. She found clean clothes in the closet, simple jeans and a sweater, nothing like the designer pieces Damien's stylist had provided. When she emerged, she found Marcus waiting in the hallway. "I need to show you something," he said. No greeting, no small talk, just barely contained urgency. Elena followed him to Damien's office. Multiple laptops covered the desk, all showing different data streams and security footage. "After Margaret's arrest, I went through every file on her laptop," Marcus explained. "Found her communications with Grant, found evidence of how long she'd been planning this. But I also found something else, something that doesn't make sense." He pulled up a video file. Security footage from 3 weeks ago. The timestamp showed 3:47 a.m. The camera angle captured the mansion's side entrance. Margaret appeared on screen, moving quickly, carrying something small. She approached the security panel, entered a code, and stepped outside for exactly 90 seconds. When she returned, her hands were empty. What was she carrying? Elena asked. This. Marcus opened another file. Enhanced footage showing the object in Margaret's hands. A flash drive. So she was passing information to Grant physically, Elena said. We already knew she was the leak. Watch what happens next. Marcus fast-forwarded the footage. 2 hours later, another figure approached the same entrance. Male, tall, moving with military precision. The figure entered the same code Margaret had used, stepped outside briefly, then returned and disappeared into the mansion. Who is that? Elena demanded. That's what I couldn't figure out, until I enhanced the footage and ran facial recognition. Marcus pulled up a freeze frame. The man's face was partially obscured by shadows, but visible enough. Elena's blood went cold. She knew that face. That's Thomas Brennan, she whispered. Grant's partner, the detective he rode with for 7 years. Exactly. Which means Margaret wasn't just working with Grant. She was working with someone inside the police department who had resources Grant didn't. Someone who could coordinate the assault on the mansion. Someone who's still out there, Elena finished. Marcus nodded grimly. Grant's dead. Margaret's in custody. But Detective Brennan is still actively duty with full access to police resources. And according to the communications I found, he blames you personally for destroying his partner's life. The room spun sickeningly. Elena grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. How long have you known this? She asked. 3 hours. I've been trying to locate Brennan, but he's not responding to calls. His house is empty. His squad car hasn't reported in since yesterday. Does Damien know? Not yet. He's been handling police interviews all morning. I wanted to show you first because... Marcus hesitated. Because the last communication between Margaret and Brennan was sent this morning, after Grant died, after Margaret was arrested, and it simply said, execute contingency. What contingency? I don't know, but nothing about this feels finished. Elena's mind raced. Grant dead. Margaret exposed. But another player still in motion, someone who knew their security protocols, who had police authority, who blamed Elena for everything. We need to tell Damien, she said. Right now. They found him in the library, reviewing legal documents with 3 lawyers. When Marcus showed him the evidence, Damien's expression went absolutely cold. How did we miss this? He demanded. Brennan was careful, used encrypted channels, met Margaret off-property. He's had months to prepare contingencies we know nothing about. Then we find him. Now. Pull every resource we have. I want his location within the hour. The lawyers exchanged uncertain glances. What? Damien snapped. The lead lawyer cleared his throat. We've received a filing from the district attorney's office. They're opening an investigation into Grant Holloway's death, specifically whether the shooting was justified self-defense or if excessive force was used. You can't be serious. They have evidence suggesting Grant was attempting to surrender when you fired the fatal shots. A witness came forward this morning claiming they heard Grant say, "Don't shoot," immediately before the gunfire. What witness? Elena demanded. Everyone in that pantry is either dead or works for us. Detective Thomas Brennan, the lawyer said quietly. He filed an official statement claiming he witnessed the shooting through a security feed. Claims Grant was unarmed and surrendering when Damien executed him. The bottom dropped out of Elena's stomach. That's a lie, she said. Grant had a gun to my head. He was actively threatening to... It's your word against a decorated police detective's sworn testimony. And given Mr. Moretti's criminal history, the DA's office is taking Brennan's statement very seriously. Damien stood very still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. This is retaliation, he said quietly. Brennan is using the system to destroy me legally since he can't do it physically. It's effective, the lawyer admitted. If the DA proceeds with charges, you'll face manslaughter at minimum, possibly murder too. And given the evidence Brennan has allegedly compiled, what evidence? He claims to have recordings of you admitting to ordering Grant's death, claims the shooting was premeditated assassination, not self-defense. That's impossible. No such recording exists. Then we'll prove it in court. But in the meantime, I need to advise you that arrest is likely within 24 hours. We should prepare for... The power died. Not the emergency lights this time. Everything. Total blackout in the middle of the afternoon. That's not an accident, Marcus said, already moving toward the door. Someone cut the main lines. Security poured into the library, weapons drawn, coordinating response through backup radios. Building is surrounded, one reported. Multiple contacts, police vehicles. Grant's people? Damien demanded. No, actual police. They're announcing a warrant for your arrest, and the security officer hesitated. They're demanding Elena Vale be released into their custody for her own protection. Elena's blood turned to ice water. Damien looked at her. Brennan is using legitimate law enforcement to separate us. Once you're in police custody, I can't protect you. I won't go. You may not have a choice. The front entrance erupted with the sound of a battering ram slamming into reinforced doors. Once, twice, the wood held but wouldn't last much longer. Damien Moretti, a voice boomed through a megaphone. This is Detective Thomas Brennan. You're under arrest for the murder of Grant Holloway. Come out with your hands up and send Elena Vale out unharmed, or we're coming in.
He can't arrest you, Elena said frantically. He doesn't have jurisdiction. There's no warrant. This is exactly what he wants. Chaos. Confusion. Me separated from you. Damien grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. You're going to let them take you into custody. You're going to go peacefully, and you're going to trust that I will fix this. No, I'm not leaving you. Elena,
I said no. Her voice rose to something close to hysteria. I spent 3 years being told what to do by a man with a badge and a gun. I'm not doing it again. Not for Brennan, not for anyone. The battering ram hit the door again. Wood splintered. The barrier was failing. We need to move, Marcus urged. Panic room, now. We can... They know about the panic room, Damien cut him off. Margaret gave them everything. There's nowhere in this building that's actually safe. Then we fight, Elena said. Against legitimate police carrying a warrant? That's suicide. Better than letting Brennan win. The front door exploded inward. Tactical police flooded the entrance, weapons raised, shouting commands. Down on the ground, hands where we can see them. Security personnel lowered their weapons. You couldn't fight actual cops without becoming the criminals they claimed you were. Damien pulled Elena behind him one last time as Brennan entered the mansion, flanked by armed officers. He looked nothing like the photos Grant had shown her. No longer just a partner, but something harder, colder. A man with nothing left to lose and plenty of rage to burn. Mr. Moretti, Brennan said pleasantly, you're under arrest for murder. You have the right to remain silent. This is a legal seizure, Damien's lawyer interrupted. You have no warrant, no jurisdiction, and no... I have a signed warrant from Judge Morrison, same judge who released Grant on bail. Brennan smiled. Funny how these things work out. Morrison is compromised. Grant had leverage over, prove it in court. Brennan gestured to his officers. Cuff him. 2 cops moved forward. Damien didn't resist as they secured his wrists behind his back. Then Brennan turned to Elena. Mrs. Holloway, he said. Or should I say Mrs. Vale? I'm told you prefer your maiden name now. Don't call me anything. Fair enough. You're coming with us too. Protective custody. For your own safety after the trauma you've endured. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm afraid that's not optional. You're a material witness in a murder investigation, which means you need my cooperation, and you're not getting it. Brennan's pleasant expression cracked slightly. The alternative is a court order compelling your testimony. Then you'll spend the next several weeks in a holding cell until the trial. Is that really what you want? Elena looked at Damien. He shook his head slightly. A warning. But she was done being warned, done being protected, done being told what to do by men who thought they knew better. My husband tried to kill me, she said clearly, loudly, making sure every cop in the room heard. Damien Moretti saved my life. If you arrest him for that, you're finishing what Grant started. Your husband was an abusive piece of garbage, Brennan agreed. And now he's a dead piece of garbage. But the law doesn't allow murder in retaliation for abuse. It allows self-defense. And the evidence suggests Moretti's actions exceeded self-defense. What evidence? Your word? My testimony. The forensics. Grant's autopsy showing he was shot in the back while retreating. Brennan stepped closer. Your boyfriend is going to prison, Elena. Nothing you say or do will change that. The only question is whether you go down with him or accept the protection I'm offering. Elena looked at the cops surrounding them, at Brennan's satisfied expression, at Damien standing silent, already calculating his next move. This was justice. The system Grant had hidden behind for years, weaponized one last time against the person who'd escaped him. "I'm not going with you," she repeated. "Then you're under arrest for obstruction." Brennan nodded to two female officers. "Take her." They moved forward. Elena tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go, hands closed around her arms. She struggled instinctively, panic overriding logic. "Don't touch me! Get off!" "Thou shalt you sheep." One of the officers twisted her arm behind her back. Pain exploded up to her shoulder. Her injured ankle gave out, and she collapsed to her knees. "Enough," Damien snarled. "She's not resisting. Let her stand." "She's absolutely resisting," Brennan countered. "Add assault on an officer to the charges." "I didn't assault anyone." "Your perspective, not mine." Brennan crouched beside her, voice dropping to something only she could hear. "Grant was my best friend, my partner. You destroyed his life, turned him into a monster, and you're going to pay for that." Elena stared at him. "He was always a monster. You just never cared enough to notice. Or maybe you drove him to it." Brennan stood. "Either way, you're about to find out what happens when you cross the wrong people." They hauled Elena to her feet, cuffed her wrists, read her rights in monotone voices while Damien fought against his own restraints, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits that would destroy careers. None of it mattered. They were dragged from the mansion separately. Elena caught one last glimpse of Damien being shoved into a squad car before they forced her into a different vehicle. As they pulled away from the estate, Elena twisted to look back through the rear window. The mansion, her sanctuary for the past month, grew smaller in the distance. Damien was gone. Margaret had betrayed them. Grant was dead, but his revenge lived on through Brennan, and Elena was trapped again in the hands of someone who believed they owned her. The car turned onto the main road, and the estate disappeared completely. For the first time since that midnight train, Elena understood with absolute certainty she was alone, and the nightmare was far from over. The police station smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Elena sat handcuffed to a metal chair in an interrogation room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, her ankle throbbing with each heartbeat. They'd separated her from Damien the moment the squad cars pulled away from the estate. She had no idea where they'd taken him, no idea if his lawyers had reached him yet, no idea if she'd ever see him again. The door opened. Brennan entered carrying two styrofoam cups, his expression almost friendly. He set one in front of her, then settled into the chair across the scarred table. "Coffee," he said. "Black." "Grant always said you took it black." Elena didn't touch it. "Where's Damien?" "Being processed. Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole experience. He'll be arraigned tomorrow morning." Brennan sipped his own coffee. "You, on the other hand, we're still deciding what to do with. You can't hold me. I haven't committed any crime." "Obstruction. Resisting arrest. Assaulting an officer during the struggle." Brennan shrugged. "Those charges should keep you here at least 48 hours. Long enough for us to have a real conversation about what happened to my partner." "Your partner tried to kill me, multiple times. The evidence shows a troubled marriage that ended tragically when your new boyfriend executed Grant in cold blood." Brennan leaned forward. "But here's what I think really happened. I think you seduced Damien Moretti months before you left Grant. I think you manipulated both of them, playing victim to get what you wanted. And when Grant finally discovered the truth, Moretti had him eliminated." Elena stared at him. "You actually believe that?" "I believe Grant loved you. I believe he tried everything to save your marriage. And I believe you destroyed a good man's life because you were too selfish to appreciate what you had. The word should have hurt, should have made her doubt herself the way Grant's abuse once had. Instead, Elena felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. "Detective Brennan," she said quietly, "did Grant ever tell you about the time he broke my ribs for burning dinner? Or the time he locked me in our bedroom for 3 days because I smiled at a grocery store clerk? Or the dozens of times he raped me because he believed marriage meant ownership?" Brennan's expression didn't change. "I don't believe you." "I know, that's the problem. Men like you never believe women like me until it's too late." Elena leaned forward despite the handcuffs. "Grant was your friend, your partner. I understand that. But he was also a monster who hid behind his badge and your loyalty. And now he's dead because he couldn't accept losing control over me. He's dead because Damien Moretti shot him in the back while he was surrendering. That's a lie. I was there. Grant had a gun to my head. He was actively threatening to... Your testimony is compromised by your relationship with the accused. Brennan stood. But we'll sort it all out in court. For now, you're staying here. Protective custody. For your own safety. This isn't protection, this is imprisonment. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Brennan moved toward the door. Someone will bring you dinner in a few hours. Try to get comfortable. Then he was gone, the lock clicking into place behind him. Elena sat alone in the interrogation room, handcuffed to a chair bolted to the floor, and felt the walls closing in. This was Grant's final revenge, executed through his loyal partner. Everything she'd survived, everything she'd escaped, had led to this moment of being trapped again by men who refused to see her as anything but property to be controlled. Hours crawled past. Nobody came with dinner. Nobody checked on her. The lights stayed bright, the temperature dropped, and Elena's body began protesting the extended immobility. Her ankle swelled inside her shoe. Her shoulders ached from the handcuff position. Thirst made her throat feel like sandpaper. This was intentional, breaking her down through discomfort and isolation. Standard interrogation tactics Grant had described over dinner years ago, back when she'd still believed he was one of the good guys. The door finally opened around midnight. A female officer entered, young, nervous-looking, clearly uncomfortable with whatever she'd been ordered to do. "Mrs. Holloway," the officer's voice was soft, "I'm Officer Lisa Chen. I need to transfer you to a holding cell." Chen. The same last name as Margaret and Jessica. Elena studied the young woman's face, searching for resemblance. "Are you related to Margaret Chen?" Elena asked. The officer went very still. "She's my aunt. How do you—" "She worked for Damien Moretti. She's the one who helped Grant find me." Officer Chen's expression flickered with something Elena couldn't read. Pain, maybe. Or guilt. "I know," the officer said quietly. She unlocked the handcuffs from the chair, then secured Elena's wrists in front instead of behind. "A small mercy. My cousin Rebecca died 3 years ago. My aunt never recovered. When she told me what she'd done, what she'd helped Grant do, I tried talking her out of it. But grief makes people do terrible things. So does loyalty to the wrong people." "Yeah." Officer Chen helped Elena stand, supporting her when the injured ankle nearly buckled. "For what it's worth, I read Grant's file. What he did to you, I'm sorry." The words felt genuine. Elena searched the young woman's face and saw something that looked like actual empathy. "Can you help me?" Elena whispered. "Please. Brennan is using the system to finish what Grant started. If I stay here, I can't." Officer Chen looked genuinely torn. "I'm sorry. If I help you escape, I lose my job. Probably face charges. And my family has already been destroyed enough by all of this." She guided Elena out of the interrogation room and down a corridor lined with holding cells. Most were empty. Budget cuts had closed half the station years ago, Grant once mentioned. Not enough crime to justify the space. Officer Chen stopped at the last cell, furthest from any cameras or foot traffic. She unlocked the door. "Someone will process you in the morning," she said. "There's a cot, bathroom facilities. Try to rest." Elena stepped inside. The door clanged shut behind her, lock engaging with terrible finality. "Wait," Elena called as Officer Chen turned to leave. "What happens to Damien? His arraignment?" The officer hesitated. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. They're charging him with murder too. Judge Morrison is presiding. The same compromised judge who'd released Grant on bail, who Brennan had leveraged into signing the arrest warrant. He won't get a fair trial," Elena said. "Probably not." Officer Chen's expression went pained. "But that's not my decision to make, I'm sorry." Then she was gone, footsteps echoing down the empty corridor. Elena sank onto the narrow cot and pressed her hands against her face. Every route forward seemed blocked. Damien arrested. Margaret exposed, but only after doing irreparable damage. Brennan using legitimate law enforcement to exact revenge. And Elena locked in a cell, helpless to do anything except wait for morning. Except she wasn't helpless. The thought came slowly,
piecing together from fragments Grant had let slip over the years. The station's outdated security system. The empty sections where nobody patrolled. The evidence room Grant had complained about, always understaffed, always poorly monitored. Elena stood and moved to the cell door. The lock was old, the kind you could maybe manipulate if you had something thin and flexible. She pulled off her shoe, wincing as pressure released from her swollen ankle. The insole was held in place by a thin metal shank for arch support. She pried it loose with her fingernails, bending the metal back and forth until it snapped free. Not ideal, but maybe enough. Grant had demonstrated picking locks once, showing off his skills. Elena had watched more carefully than he'd realized, filing the information away with everything else she'd learned about surviving him. She slid the metal shank into the lock mechanism, feeling for the pins. 1 attempt. 2. Her hand shook from adrenaline and fear. On the 5th try, something clicked. The cell door swung open. Elena stood frozen, hardly believing it had worked. Then survival instinct kicked in and she moved into the corridor, keeping close to the wall, listening for any sound of approach. The station felt deserted. Most officers worked day shifts. Night crew was minimal, usually just a desk sergeant and maybe 1 patrol unit. If she could reach the evidence room, find her phone, she could contact Damien's lawyers. Get them working on his release before the rigged arraignment destroyed any chance of fair treatment. She found a staff directory near the stairwell. Evidence room was basement level, south wing, the closed section Grant had mentioned. Elena descended the stairs on her injured ankle, each step agony she forced herself to ignore. The basement corridor stretched dark and empty, half the lights burned out, exactly as she'd hoped. The evidence room door was locked but not alarmed. Another old system. Another vulnerability Grant had complained about. Elena worked the metal shank into this lock, hands steadier now, finding the rhythm faster. The door opened. Inside, rows of metal shelving held tagged evidence bags and boxes. Elena found the recent intake section, searching desperately for anything with today's date. Her fingers found a clear bag labeled with her name. Phone, wallet, keys to a car she no longer owned. She tore open the bag and grabbed the phone, hands shaking as she powered it on. The screen lit up, showing dozens of missed calls. She scrolled through contacts, found Damien's head lawyer. Going somewhere? Elena spun around. Brennan stood in the doorway, weapon drawn but lowered, expression more disappointed than angry. I had a feeling you'd try something, he said. Grant always said you were smarter than you looked. More dangerous, too, once you decided to stop playing victim. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. I was never playing. I was surviving. Semantics. Brennan stepped into the evidence room. Here's what happens now. You drop the phone. You come with me quietly. And I forget this little escape attempt happened. Otherwise, I add breaking and entering, theft of evidence, and attempted flight to your charges. You'll spend the next 6 months in county jail waiting for trial. You're going to do that anyway. Maybe. But if you cooperate, I might be convinced to show mercy. Testify against Moretti. Confirm he manipulated you, controlled you, used you as a weapon against Grant. Do that, and you walk away clean. Elena stared at him. You want me to lie under oath? I want you to tell the truth. That Damien Moretti is a criminal who destroys lives. That Grant tried to save you from him. That everything that happened was Moretti's fault, not yours. And if I refuse, then you're complicit in Grant's murder, which makes you just as guilty as your boyfriend. Brennan's expression hardened. Choose carefully, Elena. This is your last chance at redemption. Elena looked at the phone in her hands, at Brennan blocking the only exit, at the weapon he could draw and fire before she made it 3 steps. Grant had trained her to recognize no-win scenarios, taught her that sometimes survival meant accepting the loss and waiting for better opportunities. But Grant was dead, and Elena was done accepting losses. No, she said. Excuse me? I said no. I won't lie for you. I won't betray Damien, and I sure as hell won't let you finish what Grant started. Elena's voice gained strength with each word. So if you're going to arrest me, do it. If you're going to shoot me, do it. But I'm not cooperating with your revenge fantasy. Brennan's jaw clenched. You're making a serious mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. They stood in tense silence, standoff stretching. Then Brennan's radio crackled. Detective Brennan, we have a situation at the front desk.
Multiple civilians demanding to see Elena Vale. They're threatening to call media if we don't handle it, Brennan snapped into the radio. I'm busy. Sir, one of them claims to be her lawyer. Says he has a writ of habeas corpus signed by a federal judge. He's demanding immediate access, or he's filing civil rights violations against the entire department. Damien's lawyers. They'd found her. Elena felt hope flare in her chest. Brennan cursed viciously. He grabbed Elena's arm, grip bruising. We're going upstairs. You're going to tell your lawyer you're fine, you're here voluntarily, and you'll see him in the morning. Understand? And if I don't? Then I'll make sure Damien Moretti never sees daylight again. I have enough fabricated evidence to bury him under charges that stick, even if the murder case falls apart. Drugs, money laundering, human trafficking. I'll destroy him so thoroughly his own lawyers won't recognize what's left. The threat landed like a physical blow. Elena saw the truth in Brennan's eyes. He would do exactly that. Revenge for Grant had consumed him completely. Fine, she whispered. I'll cooperate. Smart girl. Brennan hauled her upstairs, hand locked around her arm, weapon concealed but ready. They emerged into the station's main level where chaos had erupted around the front desk. 3 lawyers in expensive suits argued with the desk sergeant, while a video camera recorded everything. Behind them, a woman Elena vaguely recognized from news coverage stood with a microphone, clearly a reporter. There she is! One of the lawyers pointed at Elena. Mrs. Vale, are you being held against your will? Every eye in the room turned toward her. The camera swung to capture her face. The reporter pushed forward, already asking questions Elena's brain couldn't process. Brennan's grip tightened in warning. Elena opened her mouth to deliver the lie he'd demanded. Instead, different words came out. Yes, she said clearly. I'm being held illegally. Detective Brennan arrested me without cause and is trying to force me to provide false testimony against Damien Moretti. I'm requesting immediate legal representation and protection from retaliation. The room exploded. Brennan went rigid beside her, rage radiating from every pore. The lawyers surged forward, demanding her release. The reporter fired questions at Brennan about false arrest and police corruption. The desk sergeant grabbed his phone, clearly calling for backup or a supervisor. You just ended any chance of mercy, Brennan hissed against Elena's ear. Good. I don't want your mercy. I want justice. One of Damien's lawyers, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Stone, reached them first. She thrust papers at Brennan, speaking in clipped legal terminology Elena barely followed. Federal writ, immediate release, civil rights violations, unlawful detention. She's under arrest for, Brennan started, for charges you fabricated. We have evidence. Patricia turned to Elena. Mrs. Vale, are you injured? Have you been mistreated? My ankle. They didn't provide medical care, and I've been denied food and water for... Elena checked the wall clock. 9 hours. The reporter captured every word. Her camera operator filmed Elena's swollen ankle, the marks on her wrists from the handcuffs, the exhaustion written across her face. This is a media circus, Brennan snapped. You can't just... Actually, we can. Patricia smiled coldly. Federal authority supersedes local police in cases of civil rights violations. Mrs. Vale is coming with us. If you have legitimate charges, file them properly through the district attorney's office. Otherwise, release her immediately or face federal obstruction charges yourself. Brennan looked like he wanted to shoot someone. His hand drifted toward his weapon. The desk sergeant moved between them, hands raised placatingly. Detective, let her go. This has gotten too public. We need to de-escalate. She broke out of her cell. That's escape from custody. Did she? Patricia raised an eyebrow. Or was she never properly arrested in the first place? Because I don't see any booking paperwork, no Miranda rights documentation, no formal charges filed with the DA, which means technically she was never in custody at all. She was kidnapped. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Brennan's face purpled. You're twisting. I'm stating facts. Now release my client or I'll have federal marshals here in 20 minutes. The standoff stretched. Elena held her breath, waiting for Brennan to snap, to do something violent and irreversible. Then he shoved Elena forward, releasing her arm with enough force to make her stumble. Get out, he snarled. But this isn't over, not even close. Patricia caught Elena before she fell. 2 other lawyers flanked them as they moved toward the exit, forming a protective barrier between Elena and Brennan's murderous glare. The reporter chased them outside, still filming, asking questions Patricia deflected with practiced ease. A black sedan waited at the curb, engine running. They bundled Elena inside. The door closed. The locks engaged. The driver pulled away from the station with careful speed. Elena collapsed against the leather seats, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "You're safe," Patricia said. She pulled out a phone and made 3 rapid calls, coordinating next steps Elena's exhausted brain couldn't follow. When she finished, she turned to Elena. "That was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. Do you have any idea what Brennan could have done to you?" "Yes, but I couldn't let him win." "Well, you just made national news. By tomorrow morning, every media outlet will be covering this story. Corrupt cop targeting abuse survivor. Federal lawyers rescuing her from illegal detention." Patricia smiled grimly. "Brennan wanted to control the narrative. You just blew it wide open." "What about Damien?" "His arraignment is still scheduled for 9 a.m., but now we have leverage. Public attention. Evidence of police corruption. It won't guarantee his release, but it significantly improves our position." The sedan navigated dark streets, heading away from the station toward downtown. Elena recognized the route to Damien's law firm's office tower. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Office. Safe house. Neutral territory where Brennan can't reach you. You'll stay there until the arraignment. Then we'll decide next steps based on the judge's ruling. Judge Morrison is compromised. Brennan has leverage over him. We know. We're working on getting the case reassigned to a different judge, but that takes time and legal maneuvering. We don't have time. Brennan is planning something, some contingency Margaret mentioned before everything fell apart." Patricia's expression tightened. "Then we'll be ready for it." They arrived at a high-rise apartment building downtown. Patricia guided Elena through a private entrance, up a service elevator to a furnished apartment on the 20th floor. Security personnel stood watch in the hallway. "Rest," Patricia ordered. "Someone will bring medical supplies for your ankle, food, whatever you need. But don't leave this apartment until I come get you for the arraignment. Understood?" Elena nodded, too exhausted to argue. Alone in the safe house, she collapsed onto the couch and finally let herself break. Tears came in harsh, ugly sobs that shook her entire body. Everything hurt. Everything felt impossible. Grant was dead, but his ghost still haunted her through Brennan's vendetta. Damien was facing murder charges for saving her life. And she was trapped again. Different walls, but same suffocating helplessness. She must have cried herself into unconsciousness because she woke to pale morning light streaming through the windows and someone knocking on the door. Patricia entered carrying coffee and a bag from a pharmacy. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I got hit by a truck." "Accurate." Patricia set down the items. "Medical supplies, pain medication, and I brought clothes for the arraignment, something professional but not performative. We want you looking credible." Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. "What time is it?" 7 a.m. Arraignment is at 9. We need to leave here by 8:30 to ensure we're seated before the judge enters. "Have you seen Damien?" "Briefly, last night at the detention center. He's holding up well, all things considered." Patricia hesitated. "He asked me to tell you something. He said, trust the plan. No matter what happens, trust the plan." "What plan?" "He didn't elaborate, but Damien Moretti doesn't do anything without multiple contingencies. Whatever he's arranged, he believes it will work." Elena wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that Damien had orchestrated some brilliant legal maneuver that would untangle this nightmare. But Grant had taught her to recognize when men promise things they couldn't deliver. She showered and changed into the clothes Patricia provided: slacks, blouse, blazer, professional armor for the battle ahead. The pharmacy bag contained elastic bandages for her ankle. She wrapped it tightly, swallowed pain medication, and tried to prepare mentally for whatever was coming. At 8:30, they left the safe house. The sedan was waiting. Security escorted them to the vehicle, watching for any sign of Brennan or his allies. The courthouse loomed downtown, all stone columns and architectural intimidation. Media trucks crowded the front steps. Reporters swarmed as Patricia and Elena approached, shouting questions, cameras flashing. "Mrs. Vale, how do you feel about your rescuer facing murder charges? Is it true you and Damien Moretti were having an affair? Do you believe the justice system failed you?" Patricia shielded Elena with her body, navigating through the chaos to the courthouse entrance. Security inside checked them through metal detectors. They climbed stairs to the third floor, where Judge Morrison's courtroom waited. The gallery was packed. Reporters filled half the benches. Spectators who'd lined up for hours occupied the rest. Elena recognized some faces. Police officers who'd worked with Grant, colleagues from her university days, even a few women from the shelter she'd tried staying at 6 months ago. All of them watching, judging, waiting to see how this story ended. Damien sat at the defense table between two lawyers, wrists secured in handcuffs, wearing an orange detention jumpsuit that looked obscene on someone normally dressed in designer suits. When Elena entered, his eyes found hers immediately. He looked exhausted but unbroken. He mouthed something she couldn't quite read. "Trust me, maybe." Or, "I'm sorry." Patricia guided Elena to the front row behind the defense table. "Stay calm no matter what happens. Don't react visibly. The media is watching everything." The bailiff stood. "All rise." The Honorable Judge David Morrison presiding. Everyone stood as Morrison entered. A thin man in his 60s, carrying himself with authority that looked increasingly fragile. He settled behind the bench, adjusted his glasses, and reviewed the documents before him. "We're here for the arraignment of Damien Moretti, charged with murder in the second degree for the death of Detective Grant Holloway. How does the defendant plead?" One of Damien's lawyers stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor. We also move for immediate dismissal of all charges based on overwhelming evidence of self-defense and police corruption surrounding the..." Motion denied. Morrison didn't even look up. "Bail is set at $5 million. Cash only. Next case." The courtroom erupted. Patricia shot to her feet, objecting loudly. Damien's other lawyers shouted over each other, citing precedents and constitutional violations. Morrison slammed his gavel. "Order! This arraignment is concluded. Defendant will be remanded to county detention pending trial. Bailiff, remove him." Guards moved to take Damien away. He caught Elena's eyes one more time, expression unreadable. Then chaos exploded. The courtroom doors burst open. Federal marshals in full tactical gear flooded inside, weapons drawn, moving with coordinated precision. "Nobody move!" The lead marshal's voice boomed. "Judge David Morrison, you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Step down from the bench with your hands visible." Morrison went white. "This is outrageous. I'm a sitting judge. You can't..." "We have a warrant signed by the chief federal judge for this district. You're coming with us." The marshals approached the bench. "Now!" Elena's mind reeled. She looked at Patricia, who looked equally shocked. This wasn't Damien's lawyers doing. This was something bigger. Morrison descended from the bench with shaking hands. The marshals secured his wrists and began reading his rights. Another figure entered the courtroom. A woman in her 40s wearing an FBI windbreaker, carrying a folder thick with documents. "Special Agent Rebecca Morrison," she announced. "FBI Public Corruption Unit. We've been investigating Judge Morrison for the past 6 months based on allegations of accepting bribes and using his position to protect criminals. This morning, we received additional evidence tying him to Detective Grant Holloway's abuse of power and to Detective Thomas Brennan's conspiracy to obstruct justice." The courtroom went absolutely silent. "Where's Brennan now?" one of the reporters called out. "In federal custody, arrested 20 minutes ago at his home. We have evidence of his involvement in multiple criminal conspiracies, including falsifying evidence against Mr. Moretti and coordinating an illegal assault on a private residence." Agent Morrison looked directly at Elena. "We also have testimony from Margaret Chen, who agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for reduced charges. She's provided detailed information about Brennan's plan to destroy both Elena Vale and Damien Moretti using police resources." Sad. Elena couldn't breathe. This was Damien's plan. He'd somehow coordinated with federal investigators, fed them evidence, orchestrated this perfectly timed intervention. Another judge entered. A woman Elena didn't recognize. She took Morrison's place behind the bench, expression stern. "This is Judge Catherine Wells. I'll be taking over Mr. Moretti's arraignment." She reviewed the case file rapidly. "Given the extraordinary circumstances and evidence of corruption surrounding the charges, I'm dismissing all accusations against Damien Moretti with prejudice. Mr. Moretti, you're free to go. Bailiff, remove those handcuffs immediately." The guards released Damien. He stood, rubbing his wrists, meeting Elena's eyes across the courtroom.
The media erupted with questions. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted over each other. Security tried maintaining order while federal agents led Morrison away in handcuffs. Patricia grabbed Elena's arm. "We need to go, now, before this turns into a complete circus." They pushed through the crowd toward the defense table. Damien met them halfway, his lawyers flanking him, everyone moving toward the side exit. Outside, more media waited, but security held them back long enough for everyone to reach the waiting vehicles. Elena and Damien ended up in the same sedan, separated from the lawyers, finally alone for the first time since yesterday's arrest. "You planned this," Elena said. "All of it. Not all of it, but I had contingencies." Damien looked exhausted. "The FBI investigation was already happening. I just fed them evidence and made sure they understood how Brennan and Morrison connected to Grant's crimes. The timing was luck." "That wasn't luck. That was perfect execution. I told you I'd protect you. I keep my promises." The sedan navigated away from the courthouse, heading toward the estate. Elena watched the city pass, mind still processing everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. "Margaret's testimony," she said. "She agreed to cooperate. In exchange for reduced charges and protection for her surviving daughter. She'll serve time, but nothing like what she'd face otherwise." Damien's expression darkened. "I can't forgive what she did, but I understand why she did it. Grief makes people destroy themselves." "And Brennan?" "Facing federal charges that will put him away for decades. Corruption, conspiracy, falsifying evidence, kidnapping you. The FBI built an airtight case." Damien reached for her hand. "It's over, Elena. Actually over this time. Grant's dead. Brennan's neutralized. Morrison's exposed. There's no one left to come after you." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the relief those words should bring. Instead, she felt hollowed out, like she'd survived a war but couldn't remember what peace felt like. They reached the estate. Workers were already repairing yesterday's damage, replacing windows, patching bullet holes, cleaning blood from floors. The mansion looked like a battlefield being methodically erased. Inside, Margaret's absence felt enormous. All her small touches gone. The warmth she'd brought revealed as careful manipulation. Elena stood in the foyer, suddenly uncertain what came next. "You should rest," Damien said gently. "Process everything. Take whatever time you need. And then what? Then whatever you want. You're free, Elena, completely free. No more threats, no more running, just life." The word felt foreign, life, something that belonged to other people, not her. "I don't know how to do that anymore," she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out together." Damien stepped closer. "If you want, or if you need space, I'll arrange somewhere for you to go. Whatever helps you heal." Elena looked at him. This complicated, dangerous man who'd saved her life repeatedly and revealed himself capable of terrible things. She should leave, should put distance between herself and everything connected to the nightmare she'd survived. Instead, she moved into his arms and let herself break completely. Damien held her while she shook, one hand stroking her hair, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I've got you," he murmured. "You're safe. You're home." And for the first time, Elena let herself believe it. The next 3 days passed in a blur of lawyers, police interviews, and media statements. Patricia Stone handled most of the external pressure, feeding carefully crafted responses to reporters while shielding Elena from direct contact. The story dominated news cycles. Corrupt cops exposed. Abuse survivor vindicated. Federal intervention saving the day. Public opinion swung dramatically in Elena's favor as evidence of Grant's pattern of abuse became public record. Justice, everyone said. Finally, justice. But Elena still felt unmoored, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for another threat to emerge from shadows that no longer existed. On the fourth night, unable to sleep, she found Damien in his office reviewing security reports. He looked up when she entered. "Can't rest either?" he asked. "Every time I close my eyes, I see Grant's face, or Brennan, or Margaret." Elena sank into the chair across from him. "How long until that stops?" "I don't know. Years, probably. Trauma doesn't evaporate just because the threat is gone." "Have you talked to anyone? About your sister? About what happened to her?" Damien was quiet for a moment. "Some. Therapy helped eventually, but mostly time helped, and finding purpose in protecting others." "Is that what I am to you? Purpose?" "No.
His eyes met hers steadily. You're the person who reminded me that protecting others actually matters, that it's not just revenge dressed as heroism. Elena studied him. What happens now, between us? I don't know. What do you want to happen? She stopped, struggling to articulate feelings too complicated for simple words. I want to stop feeling like I'm waiting for permission to exist. I want to make choices because I want to make them, not because I'm afraid of consequences. I want to... A phone rang. Damien's personal cell, the one only his inner circle had access to. He checked the screen, expression hardening. It's Marcus. He's at the hospital. Elena's heart stopped. What happened? Damien answered the call, listened for 30 seconds, then stood abruptly. We need to go, he said. Now. What's wrong? There was an explosion at the FBI field office where they were holding Brennan. Part of the building collapsed. Damien was already moving toward the door. Brennan escaped in the chaos. They found 2 guards dead. He's in the wind. Elena felt ice flood her veins. How is that possible? Federal custody? Maximum security? He had help. Someone with resources and access. Damien grabbed keys, weapon, phone. Marcus is coordinating with the FBI, but until they find Brennan, you're not safe. I thought it was over. So did I. Damien's expression went cold. I was wrong. They rushed to the garage. The same sedan that had carried them from the courthouse waited, engine already running, driver ready. As they pulled away from the estate, Elena's phone buzzed. One new message from an unknown number. The game isn't over, baby. Not until one of us is dead. See you soon. Elena showed Damien the message. His jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. He won't get near you, Damien promised. But as the sedan raced through dark streets toward the hospital where Marcus waited with whatever intelligence he'd gathered, Elena understood with absolute certainty. The nightmare wasn't over. It was evolving into something worse. And this time, only one of them would survive. The hospital parking garage smelled like oil and fear. Elena's hands wouldn't stop shaking as Damien guided her through rows of empty vehicles toward the elevator bank where Marcus had said to meet. Every shadow looked like Brennan. Every distant sound could be footsteps approaching. Stay close, Damien murmured, weapon drawn but concealed against his thigh. Eyes forward. If anything happens, you run. Understand? Elena nodded, throat too tight for words. The text message burned in her mind. Brennan was out there somewhere, planning his final move, and she'd become the bait that would draw him into the open. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside. Damien pressed the button for the 3rd floor where Marcus was coordinating with FBI agents. The doors began sliding shut, a hand thrust between them at the last second. Damien's weapon came up instantly, finger on the trigger, then froze. Officer Lisa Chen stepped into the elevator, face bruised, left arm in a sling, dried blood on her uniform collar. Don't shoot, she gasped. Please, I need to warn you. Warn us about what? Damien demanded, weapon still trained on her. Brennan, he's not working alone anymore. After the explosion, he made contact with someone from Grant's old unit, a tactical officer named Hayes who owes Brennan for covering up a shooting 3 years ago. Lisa's words came fast, desperate. They're planning something tonight. Here, at the hospital. How do you know this? Because Hayes called me, tried recruiting me to help, said they needed someone inside to disable security protocols. Lisa's eyes found Elena. I told him no. Then I came to find you. They're targeting both of you. Brennan wants Damien dead and you destroyed. He's past rational thinking. The elevator climbed toward the 3rd floor. Damien lowered his weapon slightly, but didn't holster it. Why should we trust you? He asked. Your aunt helped Grant hunt Elena for months. Because my aunt is sitting in federal custody realizing she destroyed herself for revenge that solved nothing. Because my cousin Rebecca deserved better than being another victim in Damien Moretti's empire. Lisa's voice cracked. And because Elena doesn't deserve to die for escaping an abusive marriage. I read the case files, all of them, what Grant did to her, what Brennan is trying to finish. It's wrong. All of it is wrong. The elevator doors opened onto the 3rd floor. Hospital staff moved through corridors with purposeful efficiency, oblivious to the violence brewing beneath the sterile surface. Marcus appeared immediately, face grim. We have a problem. I know, Damien said. Brennan escaped. He's planning something here. Worse than that, the FBI just pulled their protection detail. They're reassigning resources to search for Brennan citywide, which means this floor is understaffed and vulnerable. Marcus glanced at Lisa. Who's she? Officer Chen. She says Brennan recruited help from Grant's old tactical unit. That tracks with what I'm seeing. Marcus pulled out his tablet, showing security camera feeds. 3 men in hospital maintenance uniforms entered through the service entrance 20 minutes ago. They're not hospital staff. Facial recognition came back empty. They're ghosts. How many entrances to this floor? Damien demanded. 4. Main elevator, service elevator, 2 stairwells. And the FBI left how many agents? 2. Both stationed at the main elevator. Damien cursed viciously. We're sitting ducks. We need to move Elena somewhere defensible until backup arrives. The ICU has a secure wing, Marcus suggested. Reinforced doors, limited access points. Show me. They moved through the hospital as a unit, Lisa Chen staying close despite her injuries. Elena's mind raced, trying to process everything happening too fast. Brennan was here, hunting her, using the chaos of his escape to orchestrate one final attack while law enforcement was scattered and distracted. The ICU's secure wing sat at the end of a long corridor, protected by a heavy door requiring keycard access. Marcus swiped them through. Inside, medical equipment hummed quietly around empty beds. Budget cuts had closed this section months ago, Marcus explained, only maintained for potential emergency overflow. Lock us in, Damien ordered. Cut the keycard access from inside so nobody can follow. Marcus moved to the control panel. That also means we can't get out without manually overriding the system. Do it anyway. The locks engaged with heavy mechanical clicks. They were sealed inside. Protected, but trapped. Damien positioned everyone strategically. Marcus near the control panel with eyes on security feeds. Lisa Chen by the door despite her injuries, watching the corridor through the reinforced window. Elena in the back corner, furthest from any entrance. How long until police backup arrives? Elena asked. 20 minutes minimum, Marcus said. The explosion diverted most units downtown. We're low priority compared to the manhunt. 20 minutes is a lifetime when someone wants you dead. Then we make it long enough. Damien checked his weapon, counted ammunition, prepared for a siege. The minutes crawled past. Hospital sounds filtered through the door. Codes being called, staff rushing, normal emergency operations. Everything looked routine through the security feeds. Then the lights died. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red. But the security feeds went black. The electronic locks disengaged with audible clicks. Backup generator? Damien demanded. No, this was manual. Marcus worked frantically at the control panel. Someone cut power to this section specifically. The locks are defaulting to manual release, which means anyone can open that door from outside. Yes, Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. Brennan had found them, cut them off, isolated them exactly where he wanted them. The door handle began turning. Damien raised his weapon, aiming center mass at whoever was about to enter. Lisa Chen positioned herself beside him, her service weapon drawn with her good hand. The door swung open. A maintenance worker stood there, confused, holding a toolbox. Sorry, I was told this section needed repairs to the— Get down! Damien shouted. The maintenance worker's head exploded in a spray of blood and bone. His body dropped, revealing the shooter behind him, Hayes, the tactical officer Lisa had warned about. He fired into the room with professional precision, rounds punching through medical equipment and walls. Damien returned fire, driving Hayes back into the corridor. Lisa Chen shot twice, both rounds finding their target. Hayes staggered, but didn't fall, body armor absorbing the impact. There's more! Marcus shouted, pointing at a security feed that still showed the service elevator. 3 more men in tactical gear approaching with weapons drawn. They were surrounded. Damien grabbed Elena and shoved her behind an overturned hospital bed. Stay down. Don't move unless I tell you to run. I'm not leaving you. Elena! Gunfire erupted from the corridor. Hayes advancing with covering fire while his team moved to flank through alternate routes. Marcus returned shots from the control panel position. Lisa Chen fired methodically despite blood seeping through her uniform where stitches had torn. The tactical assault was overwhelming. Professional operators against a makeshift defense. We can't hold this position, Marcus shouted over the gunfire. Too many angles of attack. Then we fall back to the patient rooms, Damien ordered. Create choke points. Make them come to us. They retreated deeper into the ICU secure wing, using medical equipment and walls for cover. Elena moved with them, staying low, her injured ankle screaming with each scrambling step. They barricaded themselves in the largest patient room, shoving beds and equipment against the door. 2 windows overlooked the parking garage 3 stories below. No escape that direction without dying. Hayes's voice echoed through the corridor. Moretti, you're trapped. Send out Elena Vale and we'll let the rest of you live. Not happening, Damien called back. Then everyone in that room dies. Your choice. Gunfire punctuated the threat. Rounds chewed through the barricaded door, forcing everyone to press against the floor. We need backup now, Marcus said into his phone. Multiple shooters, automatic weapons. We're pinned down. He ducked as bullets punched through the wall inches from his head. Yes, I see you secure wing. For God's sake, hurry. Elena watched Damien calculating their situation with cold precision. Outgunned, surrounded, running low on ammunition. This wasn't a standoff they could win through firepower. I'm going out there, Elena said. Everyone turned to stare at her. Absolutely not, Damien said. They want me. I'm the reason this is happening. If I surrender, maybe they'll kill you the moment you step through that door. This isn't negotiation. This is execution. Damien's expression was absolute. I won't let that happen. You might not have a choice. Before anyone could stop her, Elena moved to the door and shouted through the bullet holes. Brennan, I know you're out there. If you want to talk, I'll come out. Alone. Unarmed. But you let everyone else leave first. Silence fell across the corridor. Then Brennan's voice, chillingly calm. You think I'm stupid enough to let witnesses walk away? Everyone in that room knows too much. They all die. But if you come out now, I promise to make yours quick. Grant would have wanted that much mercy. Grant wanted me dead or destroyed. That's all he ever wanted. He wanted you to love him the way he loved you. Was that really so terrible? Elena felt rage crystallize in her chest, hot and sharp and clarifying. Yes, because his love felt like drowning, because he thought ownership was the same as devotion, because men like him and you never understand that control isn't care. You destroyed a good man's life. I survived a monster's marriage. There's a difference. More gunfire erupted, Hayes and his team advancing, trying to breach the patient room through overwhelming force. The barricade began failing, equipment toppling, the door splintering. We're out of time, Marcus said grimly. He was down to his last magazine. Lisa Chen had stopped returning fire entirely, too injured to continue. Damien looked at Elena with something raw in his eyes. I'm sorry. I promised to protect you. I should have. You did protect me. You gave me months of freedom I never thought I'd have. Elena reached for his hand. That matters. Whatever happens next, that matters. The door exploded inward. Hayes charged through, weapon raised. Damien fired 3 times. Hayes dropped, blood spreading beneath his tactical vest where armor didn't cover. But 2 more operators pushed through behind him. Professional, efficient, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of years training together. This was the end. Elena understood that with perfect clarity. They'd run out of ammunition, options, and time. Then the windows shattered. Ropes descended from above. 4 figures in black tactical gear rappelled into the room with explosive speed, weapons already firing. The hostile operators went down before they could process what was happening. More ropes, more tactical personnel. A full breach team inserting through the windows with military precision. The lead operator pulled off his mask. FBI Special Agent Morrison, the woman who'd arrested Judge Morrison at the courthouse. Federal agents, she announced. Everyone lower your weapons. We're extracting you now. Elena's knees gave out. Damien caught her, holding her upright as chaos swirled around them. How? Marcus started. Your distress call. We had a team en route already. When the shooting started, we redirected to external insertion. Agent Morrison gestured to her team. Clear the corridor. Find Brennan. I want him alive if possible. Her agents moved with brutal efficiency, securing the area. The hostile operators were dead or dying. Hayes bled out on the floor, eyes staring at nothing. but Brennan was nowhere to be found. "He's running," Agent Morrison said into her radio. "Lock down all exits. I want—" Gunfire erupted from somewhere near the main elevator. Sustained automatic fire. Then silence. One of the FBI agents reported through the radio. "Target acquired. Brennan attempted escape through the parking garage. Officers engaged. Suspect is down. Repeat, suspect is down." Elena's entire body went numb. "Is he—" "We need confirmation," Agent Morrison said. "Stay here. Medical personnel are coming up to treat injuries." She left with most of her team, moving toward wherever Brennan had fallen. Elena stood in the destroyed patient room, surrounded by bodies and blood and the wreckage of Brennan's final revenge attempt. Damien's arm stayed around her shoulders, the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop tilting. "It's over," Marcus said quietly. "It's actually over this time." But Elena couldn't believe it, wouldn't believe it, not until she saw Brennan's body herself. They waited in terrible silence until Agent Morrison returned, expression grim. "Thomas Brennan is dead," she confirmed. "Suicide by cop. He fired on responding officers until they had no choice but to return fire. He's gone." The words should have brought relief, should have closed the final chapter of this nightmare. Instead, Elena felt hollow, like some essential part of her had burned away in the fire of survival, leaving only ash. Paramedics flooded the secure wing, triaging injuries. Lisa Chen was rushed to emergency surgery for internal bleeding from torn stitches. Marcus had superficial wounds from flying debris. Damien had taken a graze along his ribs that looked worse than it was. Elena's ankle had swollen grotesquely. A paramedic wrapped it in ice and gave her something for the pain that made everything feel distant and unreal. They were escorted from the hospital through a maze of police and federal agents. More media waited outside, cameras rolling, reporters shouting questions Elena's exhausted brain couldn't process. Patricia Stone appeared like magic, shielding them from the worst of it, providing no comment statements while guiding everyone to waiting vehicles. Dawn was breaking as they finally reached the estate. The mansion looked peaceful in the early morning light, all evidence of yesterday's violence erased by efficient cleaning crews. Elena stood in the foyer exactly where she'd stood that first night when Damien had offered her sanctuary. It felt like years ago instead of weeks. "You should rest," Damien said gently. "We all should." "I don't think I can sleep." "Then sit with me. We don't have to talk. Just sit." They ended up in the library, the room where they'd first kissed, where everything had shifted from rescue to something deeper. Dawn light painted the windows gold. Marcus had gone to his own quarters to rest. Patricia was handling federal debriefings and media coordination. The estate staff moved through distant rooms, giving them privacy. 3 people died tonight, Elena said quietly, because Brennan couldn't accept that Grant was responsible for his own destruction. 4, Damien corrected, including Brennan himself. Does it ever stop, the violence? Sometimes, when people choose to let it stop. Damien looked exhausted beyond measure. But men like Grant and Brennan never learned that choice. They were too committed to control. And what about you? What are you committed to? Damien was quiet for a long moment. I used to think I was committed to justice. To protecting people the system failed. But the truth is messier. I'm committed to survival, to building something that can't be easily destroyed. And lately, to making sure you stay alive long enough to figure out who you are outside of fear. I don't know if I'll ever figure that out. Then we'll figure it out together. Or separately, if that's what you need. He met her eyes. You're free now, Elena. Truly free. Grant's dead. Brennan's dead. The corrupt system that protected them is being dismantled piece by piece. What happens next is entirely your choice. The word, choice, still felt foreign. Elena turned it over in her mind, examining it from every angle. I want to testify, she said finally, at the trials. Morrison's, the tactical officers who helped Brennan, anyone else they arrest. I want to tell my story publicly. Make sure people understand what happened. That will be painful, exposing everything. Good. Maybe it needs to be painful. Maybe that's how healing actually works. Damien nodded slowly. What else? I want to finish my education. I had 2 semesters left before Grant made me quit. I want to complete them. Done. I'll arrange. No. Elena stopped him.
I'll arrange it. Using my own resources. Applying for financial aid, doing it the way normal people do things. She took a shaky breath. I need to learn how to exist without someone rescuing me or controlling me or making decisions on my behalf. Understood. But I also don't want to leave here yet, not immediately. I need time to figure out what normal actually means. She looked at him. Is that okay? Can I stay while I work through everything? This is your home for as long as you want it to be. Damien's voice carried absolute sincerity. Stay a month, stay a year, stay forever. Whatever you need. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun climbed higher, painting the library in warm light that felt like possibility. The following weeks passed in strange limbo. Elena gave deposition after deposition to federal investigators, reliving her marriage and escape in excruciating detail. Patricia Stone guided her through media requests, helping her decide which interviews to grant and which to decline. The story exploded nationally. Abuse survivor defeats corrupt system. Woman trapped between two dangerous men finds her own strength. The narrative oversimplified everything, but Elena understood that's what media did. Reduced complex trauma to digestible sound bites. What mattered was that other women started reaching out. Dozens at first, then hundreds, sharing their own stories of abuse and escape. Elena read every message, cried over most of them, and began understanding that her survival meant something beyond her own freedom. Judge Morrison pleaded guilty to corruption charges and was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. 3 other officers connected to Brennan's conspiracy were arrested and charged. Internal investigations swept through multiple police departments, exposing networks of abuse and protection that had operated for decades. Grant Holloway's death was officially ruled justified self-defense. All investigations closed, his reputation destroyed posthumously as evidence of his pattern of abuse became public record. Margaret Chen accepted a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy and aiding in criminal acts. Her daughter Jessica testified against her, describing years of watching her mother consume herself with grief and rage. The estate gradually returned to something like normalcy. Staff who'd left during the chaos returned. Security protocols were updated. The bullet holes and broken windows became memory rather than reality. 2 months after Brennan's death, Elena enrolled at the university to complete her degree. She attended classes like a regular student, took notes, participated in discussions about literature and theory. It felt surreal after everything that had happened. But she kept showing up, kept choosing normalcy even when it felt impossible. Damien gave her space to breathe and grow. They had dinner together most evenings, talking about classes or current events or nothing significant. The intensity of those early weeks faded into something gentler. Friendship, maybe. Or the beginning of something neither knew how to name yet. 3 months after Brennan's death, Elena defended her thesis on trauma narratives in contemporary fiction. Her professors praised the depth of analysis and personal insight. She didn't tell them that every word came from lived experience. 4 months after Brennan's death, Lisa Chen was released from the hospital after multiple surgeries. She'd been quietly helping federal investigators piece together the full extent of Brennan's conspiracy. Elena visited her once, bringing flowers and gratitude. "You saved my life," Elena said. "I did what I should have done from the beginning, chose right over loyalty." Lisa looked older somehow, worn down by physical pain and moral complexity. "My aunt and cousin are testifying at her sentencing hearing next week, asking for leniency. I don't know if I can be there." "You don't have to. Family is complicated." "Yeah, it is." They talked for an hour about nothing important. 2 women connected by tragedy, finding tentative peace in shared survival. 5 months after Brennan's death, on a gray autumn afternoon, Elena found herself standing at Grant's grave. She hadn't planned to come here. Her feet just carried her to the cemetery, where he'd been buried in a quiet service attended by the few people who still believed his lies. The headstone was simple. His name. His dates. No meaningful inscription because nobody could agree what he'd actually been. Elena stood there for a long time, feeling nothing. No rage, no grief, just emptiness where he'd once consumed her entire existence. "I don't forgive you," she said quietly. "I'll never forgive you. But I'm done letting you haunt me. Done giving you space in my head. You're dead, and I'm alive, and that's all the justice I'm going to get." She turned and walked away without looking back.
Damien waited near the cemetery entrance, leaning against his car, giving her the privacy to say whatever she needed. "How do you feel?" he asked when she reached him. "Empty, but good empty, like making space for something better." "That's growth." They drove back to the estate in comfortable silence. Autumn leaves painted the roads gold and red, the world transitioning into something new. That evening, Elena found Damien in his office reviewing legitimate business contracts, the legal side of his empire that didn't involve gray areas or moral compromise. "Can I ask you something?" she said from the doorway. "Always." "When does the guilt stop? The feeling that everyone who died because of me could have been prevented if I'd just stayed with Grant." Damien set down his pen. "It doesn't stop. You just learn to carry it differently. Recognize that their choices led to their deaths, not yours. You survived. That's not a crime. Margaret's daughter called me yesterday, Jessica. She wanted to apologize for lying about us, for helping Grant." "What did you say?"
That I understood. That trauma makes people do terrible things. That I hoped she found peace. Elena crossed to the window overlooking the gardens. She asked if I hated her mother for what she did. I told her no. I just felt sad that grief turned Margaret into someone who'd sacrifice everything for revenge that solved nothing. That's generous? It's honest. I've spent too much time drowning in hate. I'm tired of it.
Damien joined her at the window. They stood side by side, not quite touching, watching the sun set over grounds that had witnessed so much violence and somehow still looked peaceful. "I'm thinking about starting a foundation," Elena said, "using money from the civil suit against Grant's estate. Something to help abuse survivors escape and rebuild their lives. Legal support, housing assistance, therapy. Everything I needed and couldn't access." That's a powerful way to transform trauma. It feels right. Like taking all the terrible things that happened and forcing them to create something good. She glanced at him. "Would you help? Not just financially, actually help. Your resources, your connections, your ability to protect people when the system fails them." "Yes." No hesitation. "Whatever you need." "I need a partner. Someone who understands that sometimes protecting people means operating outside comfortable boundaries. Someone who won't make all the decisions for me, but also won't leave me drowning when things get complicated." "I can be that person, if you trust me to try." Elena studied his face. This complicated, dangerous man who'd saved her life repeatedly and revealed himself capable of terrible things. She'd spent 5 months learning to separate rescue from control, gratitude from obligation, safety from dependency. "I trust you," she said finally. "Not blindly, not completely, but enough to build something together." Damien's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. "That's more than I deserve." "Probably, but it's what I'm offering anyway." 6 months after Brennan's death, on the anniversary of the night Elena had fled onto that midnight train, the foundation officially launched. They called it Sophia's House, named for Damien's sister, the woman whose death had motivated him to become the person who'd recognize Elena's desperation and intervene. The media covered the launch extensively. Abuse survivor and reformed criminal justice advocate working together to fix a broken system. The narrative was still oversimplified, but the work was real. Elena stood at the podium during the press conference, hands trembling slightly as cameras flashed and reporters listened. "My name is Elena Vale," she began. 6 months ago, I was trapped in an abusive marriage with no resources and nowhere safe to run. The system that should have protected me failed repeatedly. Police who should have believed me chose to protect my abuser instead. And I learned the hardest lesson of my life, that sometimes survival means accepting help from unexpected places and becoming strong enough to help yourself. She talked for 10 minutes about trauma, about recovery, about the Foundation's mission to provide comprehensive support for survivors trying to rebuild their lives. When she finished, the room erupted in questions. Patricia Stone fielded most of them, while Elena stood beside Damien, feeling the weight of her own story transform into something that might help others carry theirs. That night, back at the estate, Elena found herself in the guest room that had become her room. All her belongings had slowly accumulated here over the months. Books she'd bought, clothes she'd chosen, art she'd selected for the walls, evidence of a life she was actively building rather than passively enduring.
A knock on the door. Damien carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Celebrating?" he asked. "Surviving. There's a difference. Important difference." He handed her a glass, then settled into the chair by her window. "You were incredible today. The press conference, the interviews. You owned your story without letting it own you. It helps having good lawyers and a safety net." Elena sipped her wine. "I keep thinking about all the women who don't have that, who are right now where I was 6 months ago, trapped and terrified, convinced there's no escape. We can't save everyone." "No, but we can save some. That has to be enough." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise over the grounds. So much had changed since that first night when Elena arrived broken and desperate. The woman she'd been then felt like someone else entirely. "Can I ask you something personal?" Damien said quietly. "Of course." "Do you ever regret getting on that train, meeting me, everything that followed?" Elena considered the question carefully. "If I'd stayed on the train past your station, Grant would have found me eventually. He'd have dragged me home and probably killed me within a week. So, no, I don't regret the choice that kept me alive long enough to learn how to fight back. But I regret the collateral damage. People who died because I was trying to survive. That weight doesn't disappear just because I'm grateful to be alive. It shouldn't disappear. The moment we stop feeling the weight of consequences is the moment we become the monsters we're fighting against." Damien finished his wine. "For what it's worth, I don't regret it either. Not any of it. You reminded me that protecting people isn't just about power or control. It's about giving them the tools to protect themselves. Is that what we're doing with the Foundation? It's what we're trying to do. Whether we succeed is another question." Elena stood and moved to where Damien sat. She took his face in her hands and kissed him. Not desperately, like that first kiss months ago. Gently, with intention and choice and the understanding that came from months learning each other beyond crisis. When they broke apart, Damien looked at her with quiet wonder. "What was that for?" he asked. "For being patient while I figured out the difference between gratitude and actual feeling, for not pushing when I needed space, for helping me become someone who could choose this instead of falling into it." "And what are you choosing?" "I'm choosing to see where this goes. No promises beyond that. No declarations of forever. Just possibility." "I'll take possibility." Damien stood, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "For as long as you're offering it." They stood together in Elena's room, which was also Damien's house, which had somehow become home despite everything that had happened within these walls. The future stretched uncertain and complicated ahead of them. But for the first time since Elena could remember, uncertainty felt like freedom instead of fear. 7 months after that midnight train, 8 months after Brennan's death, a full year after the nightmare began, Elena stood in the library that had witnessed so many turning points, now transformed into the Foundation's temporary headquarters. Phones rang constantly, staff coordinated with shelters and legal advocates and therapists. Women's voices filled the space, survivors supporting survivors, turning individual trauma into collective action. Damien worked from his office down the hall, keeping appropriate professional distance from the Foundation's operations while providing resources and connections when requested. They'd learned to navigate the complexity of their relationship. Romantic partners who were also professional collaborators, 2 damaged people building something meaningful from shared scars. It wasn't perfect. They argued about boundaries and decision-making and how much independence Elena needed versus how much support Damien wanted to provide. But they argued as equals now. No power imbalance. No rescue dynamic. Just 2 people figuring out how to exist together without consuming each other. On a cold December evening, almost a full year after that first midnight train, Elena received a call from a detective in Grant's old department. They'd found something during the final evidence review before closing his case permanently. A box in Grant's home office, hidden behind a false panel. Inside were dozens of photographs of women, not Elena, different women from years before their marriage. Each photo showed bruises, injuries, evidence of abuse spanning back to Grant's early 20s. Elena had never been his first victim, just his last. She sat with that information for a long time, feeling something shift in her understanding. Grant hadn't been made into a monster by her leaving. He'd always been one. She'd just been unlucky enough to become his target. The guilt she'd carried, that somehow she'd driven him to violence,
that she was responsible for everything that followed, finally began releasing its grip. She'd survived a monster, nothing more, nothing less. That night, she found Damien in the library reading case files for the Foundation's newest clients. "The detective called," she said. "They found evidence that Grant abused at least 7 other women before me, some during relationships, some during arrests. A pattern going back 15 years. Damien looked up. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been carrying responsibility for something that was never mine to carry." Elena sank into the chair across from him. "I didn't break Grant Holloway. He was already broken. I just refused to keep pretending he wasn't." "That's truth." "Yeah, it is." She was quiet for a moment. "I want to find those other women, the ones Grant hurt before me. Offer them support. Let them know they weren't alone, that someone finally believes them. The Foundation can help with that."
"I know, but I want to do it personally, not as the Foundation director, as someone who understands." Elena met his eyes. "Is that too much? Taking on other people's trauma when I'm still processing my own?" "Only you can answer that. But from where I'm sitting, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. If you think you can carry it, you probably can." Elena thought about strength, about survival, about the difference between enduring pain and transforming it into purpose. "I'm not strong," she said quietly. "I'm just stubborn. There's a difference." "Stubbornness kept you alive when strength would have broken. I'll take stubborn any day." They sat together as winter darkness fell outside. 2 survivors who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow built something resembling peace from the wreckage. Elena understood now that healing wasn't linear, that some days she'd wake up feeling powerful, and others she'd wake up terrified Grant was still alive. That triggers would ambush her at random moments. A raised voice, a particular cologne, the sound of footsteps behind her in empty hallways. But she also understood that surviving didn't require perfection. It just required showing up, day after day, making choices, building a life, refusing to let trauma have the final word. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Damien looked up from his reading. "For what?" "For answering my call for help on that train, for giving me space to heal without abandoning me, for becoming the kind of partner who treats me like an equal instead of a project." She smiled slightly. "And for being patient when I'm difficult." "You're not difficult. You're human. There's a difference. Still, thank you. You're welcome. Though for the record, you saved yourself. I just provided resources."
"We saved each other. That feels more accurate." Damien nodded slowly. "Yeah, it does." Outside, snow began falling, the first real snow of winter. Elena watched it through the library windows, transforming the estate's grounds into something clean and new. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, broken, convinced she'd never escape the cage her marriage had become. That woman was gone now, not erased, but transformed, stronger for having survived, wiser for having learned what real safety actually felt like. And when Elena looked at the future now, she no longer saw only darkness and fear. She saw possibility. She saw choice. She saw a life she was actively building instead of passively enduring. That was enough. That was everything. That was... The snow continued falling through the night, covering old scars with new beginnings, transforming pain into possibility. One silent moment at a time. And Elena Vale, survivor, advocate, partner, human being learning to trust herself again, stood at the window and watched it happen with quiet gratitude for the simple miracle of still being alive, still fighting, still free.